Welcome, traveller of the velvet night. It is I, the cosmic dreamer, here to guide you once again into the sanctuary of the subconscious. The world outside has turned its face away from the sun, wrapping your hemisphere in a blanket of cool, quiet indigo. There is nothing you need to do now. The demands of the day have dissolved like sugar in warm water, leaving only this moment, this safe, suspended capsule of time where gravity feels a little lighter and the air feels a little sweeter. I invite you to adjust your pillows, to feel the gentle weight of the covers settling over you, anchoring you to a place of absolute rest. Let your eyelids become heavy, heavy curtains, drawing close to shut out the flickering lights of the waking world. Breathe in deeply, drawing the cosmos into your lungs, and exhale slowly, releasing the stardust of worry back into the void. Imagine, if you will, that you're floating on a raft made of moonlight, drifting down a dark obsidian river. The water is smooth as glass, reflecting the ancient constellations above. There is no current to fight here, only a gentle rhythmic flow that carries you deeper into relaxation. As we drift, we approach a hidden garden, suspended somewhere between the earth and the stars. It is a place of miniature giants, of ancient wisdom contained in small vessels, a place where time slows down until it almost stops. We're here to explore the silent, living poetry of the bonsai. Let your mind become a blank canvas, ready to receive the verdant, calming strokes of nature's smallest masterpieces. As you step mentally from the river onto the mossy banks of this secret garden, we begin by simply holding the essence of the word itself in our minds, feeling its weight and texture. The term bonsai is not merely a label, but a linguistic vessel, a marriage of two Japanese words that paint a picture of perfect containment. Picture the first syllable, bon, which translates to a shallow tray or a low-sided pot. Visualize this container, cool ceramic, perhaps glazed in the colour of midnight blue or unglazed in the warm, rough hues of terracotta. It is a humble foundation, an earth within an earth. Then let your mind drift to the second syllable, sai, which means a planting or a growing thing. Together they form the concept of tray planting, but the translation does practically no justice to the soul of the art. It is the harmonization of the wild and the contained, a living sculpture that breathes. Imagine holding this concept in your hands, the coolness of the tray, the warmth of the living wood. It is a universe in a bowl, a slice of a mountain forest captured and placed gently upon a wooden table, allowing you to witness the grandeur of nature without ever leaving your sanctuary of rest. Drifting backward through the mists of time, we allow our imagination to travel across vast oceans and centuries, seeking the seeds of this art form. Long before the word bonsai was whispered in the tea houses of Japan, the concept was born in the misty, dragon-spined mountains of ancient China. Envision the Han Dynasty over 2,000 years ago. Here, the art was known as penjing, or tray scenery. Unlike the solitary tree we often picture today, visualize the ancient Chinese masters creating elaborate sweeping landscapes on deeper trays. Picture jagged stones arranged to mimic the towering peaks of the Huangshan Mountains, with gnarled, twisted trees clinging to their sides like desperate lovers. These were not manicured perfections, but raw, primal echoes of the wild. Can you see the mist rolling off these miniature cliffs? Can you smell the scent of wet stone and ancient pine? This was the genesis, a desire to shrink the magical, spirit-filled landscapes of the empire so that they could be contemplated in the quiet corners of a scholar's study, a way to possess the horizon itself. Like a seed carried on the wind across the sea, this art form eventually migrated to the island nation of Japan, finding fertile ground in the quiet austerity of Zen Buddhism. As we follow this historical current, notice how the landscape changes. The wild, rugged complexity of the Chinese penjing begins to undergo a transformation, stripping away the extraneous, shedding the elaborate scenery to focus intensely on the singular spirit of the tree. Imagine the silence of a Zen temple garden, where a monk sits in meditation. The bonsai here becomes a mirror of the soul. The Japanese masters sought to refine the tree to reduce it to its absolute essence. It was no longer just a landscape. It was a study in truth, beauty, and the impermanence of life. Feel the stillness of this transition. The art form became quieter, more disciplined, a practice of patience that spanned generations. It invites you to look at a single branch, a single needle, and see the entire universe reflected within it, just as a single drop of dew holds the reflection of the moon. Now, as you stand in the center of our mental garden, gazing at one of these solitary trees, allow your perception of scale to warp and shift. This is the great illusion, the magical trick of the bonsai. You're looking at a tree that stands perhaps only a foot tall, yet your mind perceives a giant. Picture yourself shrinking down, smaller and smaller, until you are standing at the base of this minute trunk. From this vantage point, the moss beneath your feet becomes a rolling, verdant meadow, soft and damp with morning dew. The trunk before you rises like a redwood, a colossal pillar of bark and history towering into the sky. This is the intent of the artist, to create the impression of immense age and size in a space small enough to hold. It is a play on perspective that tricks the brain into slowing down, into respecting the majesty of the tree despite its diminutive stature. Feel the awe of looking up into that canopy, forgetting that you could simply reach out and touch the apex. You are a traveller in a Lilliputian forest, and the world is vast and green and wonderful. Cast your gaze downward now, to where the tree meets the earth. Here lies the nebari, the surface roots, the foundation of the tree's strength. In the dim, comforting light of your imagination, trace the lines of these roots as they flare out from the base of the trunk. They are not hidden underground, but visible, grasping the soil with a powerful muscular grip. Visualize the texture of these roots, thick, weathered, perhaps covered in a fine dusting of velvet moss. They radiate outward like the spokes of a wheel, anchoring the tree against the imaginary gales of its miniature world. This is the visual anchor of stability. To look at the nebari is to feel grounded, to feel secure. It tells the story of a tree that has stood its ground for decades, perhaps centuries. Let this image of stability seep into your own body. Feel your own connection to the bed beneath you, your own roots sinking deep into the quiet, dark earth of sleep, holding you steady, holding you safe. From the stability of the roots, our eyes travel slowly upward, tracing the line of the trunk. This is the core, the spine of the bonsai. It does not shoot straight up like a telephone pole. Rather, it tells a story of struggle and survival through its movement. Visualize the taper, the way the trunk is thick and heavy at the base, gradually thinning as it reaches toward the light. This tapering is the hallmark of age, a visual rhythm that draws the eye seamlessly upward. Notice the texture of the bark. Is it rough and fissured like the skin of an ancient dragon, creating deep canyons of shadow? Or is it smooth and silver, like the skin of a beech tree under moonlight? Run your mental fingers over this surface. Feel the grit, the coolness, the hardness of the wood. The trunk may twist or lean, mimicking a tree on a windswept cliff that has bowed to the wind but never broken. It is a frozen dance, a moment of resilience captured in wood, reminding us that there is beauty in enduring, in standing tall even when the winds of life have bent us. As we examine the trunk more closely, we may encounter areas where the bark has been stripped away, revealing the smooth, bleached wood beneath. This is known as jin and shari, dead wood that has been incorporated into the living design. In the soft glow of our garden, this dead wood shines like polished bone or sun-bleached driftwood, a stark, beautiful white against the deep reds and browns of the living bark. It is not a sign of death, but a celebration of survival. Picture a high mountain juniper, battered by lightning and snow, parts of it worn away by the elements, yet it continues to thrive. The jin is a branch that has lost its bark, sticking out like a spear. The shari is a section of the trunk itself, peeled back to reveal the core. Contrast the textures in your mind, the rough, dark, living veins of the tree transporting sap, running alongside the smooth, white, fossilized history of its past. It is a harmony of opposites, a visual poem about the cycle of life, where the past is not hidden, but worn as a badge of honor. Lifting your eyes further, we reach the canopy, the lungs of the tree. Here the foliage is not a chaotic jumble, but arranged in distinct floating layers, often called pads or clouds. Visualize these clouds of green suspended in the air. Each pad is a collection of thousands of tiny leaves or needles, manicured to create a dome shape, flat on the bottom and rounded on top. Imagine lying underneath these foliage pads, looking up. Because of the careful pruning, there are spaces between the clouds, negative space, that allows the light to filter through. See the dappled sunlight dancing on the moss floor below. The structure allows the wind to pass through without resistance, and the birds to fly between the branches. It creates a sense of lightness, of buoyancy. The green is deep and rich. The dark, waxy green of pine needles, or the bright, tender green of maple leaves. Focus on a single leaf, breathing in carbon dioxide and exhaling pure, fresh oxygen. It is a slow, silent breath, a rhythm that has continued for years, a testament to the quiet persistence of life. Now, pull your perspective back to encompass the entire composition and notice the vessel that holds it all. The pot in bonsai is not merely a container, it is the frame for the painting, the stage for the dancer. But unlike a gaudy gold frame, the bonsai pot is designed to be humble, to recede from attention so the tree can shine. Visualize the harmony between the tree and its pot. If the tree is a masculine, rugged pine with rough bark, the pot might be a deep, unglazed rectangle with sharp corners and dark purple clay. If the tree is a delicate, feminine maple with slender branches, the pot might be a shallow, cream-coloured oval with a soft glaze. The pot represents the earth, the boundaries of the known world. It is solid, heavy, and cool to the touch. Imagine running your hands along the rim of the pot. It is smooth, perfectly crafted, a testament to human skill cradling the work of nature. The colour of the pot is chosen to complement the foliage or the bark, an earth tone that grounds the image, completing the circle of elements: wood, earth, and fire that bake the clay. Finally, in the quietest part of our garden, we witness the ritual that sustains this miniature life, the act of watering. This is not a chore, but a meditation, a communion between the keeper and the kept. Close your eyes and listen to the sound of water falling from a watering can. It is a soft rain, a gentle shh as the droplets hit the foliage. Visualize the water glistening on the leaves, turning the dull green into a shining emerald. Watch the water drip down through the canopy, soaking into the dark soil, darkening the akadama clay. It brings a coolness to the air, a scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry earth. This daily ritual requires patience and observation. One must know when the tree is thirsty, not by a schedule, but by the colour of the soil and the weight of the pot. It is a silent language spoken through moisture and roots. Feel the refreshing coolness of that water in your own mind, washing away the dust of the day, nourishing the roots of your subconscious, preparing you for a long, deep and regenerative sleep. As the soothing echo of the falling water fades into the moss, nourishing the roots in the dark, quiet earth, we become aware that growth is an inevitable consequence of this care. And with growth comes the need for guidance, for the gentle hand of the artist to reveal the tree's true spirit. This brings us to the meditative practice of pruning, a concept that is less about removal and more about revelation. Imagine holding a pair of traditional pruning shears in your hand. They are heavy, forged from dark, carbon steel, cool and smooth against your skin. They are not merely tools, they are an extension of your intent. In the silence of the garden, the sound of pruning is rhythmic and crisp, a soft click, followed by the flutter of a falling leaf. It is a sound of editing, of clearing away the noise to let the melody be heard. Visualize the canopy of the tree before you, dense and overgrown, hiding the beautiful structure of the branches within. With each careful snip, you are letting light into the interior, allowing the air to circulate just as we clear the clutter from our minds to allow peace to enter. We look for the branches that cross one another, the branches that grow inward, the branches that disrupt the flow. Removing them is not an act of harm, but an act of liberation. It creates negative space, those empty pockets of air between the foliage pads that are just as important as the green itself. Without the empty space, the tree is just a bush. With the empty space, it becomes a landscape, a place for the imaginary birds to fly. Watch as the silhouette tightens, becoming cleaner and more refined. It is a lesson in letting go of what is no longer needed, shedding the excess so that the essential beauty can thrive. Feel the satisfaction of this clarity, the lightness that comes with simplification, as the tree stands before you, unburdened and elegant. Once the excess has been cleared, we turn our attention to the art of shaping the future, a practice known as wiring. If pruning is the editor, wiring is the sculptor. Picture a spool of wire, perhaps soft annealed copper glowing with a warm, reddish-orange hue, or anodized aluminum in a matte, earthy brown. It is pliable, ready to bend. You watch as the artist's hands move with infinite patience, winding the wire spirally along a branch. It is a slow, serpentine motion, wrapping the wood in a metallic embrace. The wire must be tight enough to hold, yet gentle enough not to bite into the bark. It is a delicate balance of firmness and compassion. Feel the sensation of bending the branch. It is stiff, resistant at first, holding the memory of its old shape. But with steady, gentle pressure, supported by the wire, it yields. You bend it downwards perhaps to simulate the heavy weight of snow or the pull of age, or you add a subtle curve, a rhythmic movement that mimics a tree dancing in a breeze. The wire acts as a splint, a guide, holding the branch in this new position for months or even years. Over time, the wood hardens, the cells lignify, and the branch learns its new posture. When the wire is finally removed, the branch remains, frozen in its beautiful gesture. It is a profound testament to the power of gentle, persistent guidance. It reminds us that we too can change our shape, can learn new ways of being if we are guided with patience and time. As the seasons turn in our mental garden, we sense the approach of spring. The air grows warmer, the buds swell, and we approach the time of renewal, repotting. This is the most vulnerable moment in a bonsai's life, and the most critical. Imagine lifting the tree gently from its ceramic home. The root ball slides out, a dense, tangled mass of life, shaped exactly like the pot it occupied. It is a hidden world exposed to the light. The scent of damp, earthy roots fills the air, a smell of deep history and organic life. We must comb out these roots, untangling the knots of the past. Using a single-pronged root hook, we gently rake away the old, exhausted soil, freeing the root tips. We trim the long, thick roots that seek only to anchor, encouraging the growth of the fine, feeder roots that absorb nourishment. It is a surgery of rejuvenation. We're creating space for new growth, preventing the tree from becoming pot-bound and stagnating. Then, we place the tree into a fresh bed of soil, positioning it just so. We tie it down, securing it against the wind, and cover the roots with fresh earth. It is like tucking a child into a fresh, clean bed. The tree may pause its growth for a few weeks, recovering from the shock, but soon it will surge with new energy, thankful for the room to breathe. Feel the sense of relief, the lifting of constriction, the promise of a fresh start that comes with this seasonal ritual. And what of the earth we pour around these tender roots? It is not the heavy black dirt of a garden bed, but something far more specialized, a distinct element in the bonsai universe. Visualize the texture of akadama, the granular clay soil imported from the volcanic islands of Japan. It is not dust. It consists of small, hard pellets, uniform in size, resembling crushed terracotta or dry lentils. Pick up a handful in your mind. It is dry, crunchy, and creates a pleasing shifting sound as it pours, like rain on a tin roof. This soil is the lungs of the pot. Unlike garden dirt which turns to mud and chokes the roots, these granules allow water to pass right through, retaining just enough moisture in their micropores while pulling fresh oxygen down into the root zone. Watch as you water this soil. The dry light brown pellets instantly turn a dark, rich chocolate colour as they absorb the liquid. It is a visual indicator, a communication from the earth telling you it is satisfied. Over years, these hard pellets slowly break down, becoming finer, marking the passage of time until the next repotting is needed. The clean, sterile nature of this soil prevents rot and disease. It is a foundation of purity, ensuring that the tree stands in a medium that supports life without suffocating it. It teaches us the importance of a good environment, of surrounding ourselves with things that allow us to breathe freely. Rising from the soil, we begin to observe the silhouettes of the trees themselves, the various styles that nature inspires and humans refine. The first and most regal of these is the formal upright style, or chokan. Picture a solitary cedar or pine standing in a vast open meadow. It has never known the shade of a neighbour or the twist of a gale. Its trunk is perfectly straight, a vertical line drawn from earth to sky, tapering evenly as it rises. The first branch is the longest and lowest, extending to the side. The next is slightly higher, and to the other side, then one to the back to create depth. As your eye ascends, the branches become shorter and closer together, forming a perfect conical triangle. There is a supreme sense of dignity in this form. It is the archetype of tree, the image a child draws. It represents strength, integrity, and unyielding rectitude. The apex bows slightly forward, towards the viewer, a gesture of respect and welcome. Stand before this mental image and feel the stability it radiates. There is no chaos here, no confusion. Everything is ordered, symmetrical, and balanced. It calms the mind to look upon such perfection, a reminder of the quiet power of standing tall and straight, possessed of an inner compass that points true north. Yet, nature is rarely so geometric, and so we drift to the softer, more common form, the informal upright style, or moyogi. Here, the strict ruler is put away, replaced by the flowing brush of a painter. The trunk still grows generally upward, seeking the sun, but it does so in a sinuous, gentle curve. Visualize the shape of the letter S, elongated and relaxed. The trunk leans to the left, then corrects itself to the right, winding its way upward. At each bend of the trunk, a branch emerges, extending outward from the outside of the curve to balance the weight. This style tells a different story, not one of untouched perfection, but of adaptation. It suggests a tree that has grown on a hillside, or one that has had to seek light through the canopy of others. It has moved, adjusted, and flowed with the circumstances of its life. The apex is positioned directly over the centre of the base, achieving balance through movement. It is the balance of a dancer frozen in motion. The curves are graceful, inviting the eye to travel on a journey up the length of the tree. It feels organic, comfortable, and deeply human. It resonates with our own lives, which are rarely straight lines, but a series of turns and corrections that eventually lead us to where we are meant to be. But sometimes, the struggle is not just to rise, but to survive the pull of gravity itself. We move now to the edge of a high cliff in our mind's eye to witness the dramatic cascade style, or kengai. Here, the pot is placed on a tall, slender stand, for the tree does not grow up, it grows down. Imagine a pine tree clinging to a precipice, battered by falling rocks and heavy snow. The trunk rises slightly from the soil, then abruptly bends and plunges downward, cascading below the rim of the pot, dropping like a waterfall of wood and green. The apex of the tree is the lowest point, reaching towards the valley floor. It is a visually striking defiance of expectations. Yet, despite the downward pull, the branches reach up towards the light, creating a tension between the fall and the rise. The pot for a cascade is deep and tall, acting as a counterweight to the heavy mass of the tree hanging in the air. This style evokes a profound sense of awe and empathy. We feel the struggle of the tree, its precarious hold on life, and its triumphant will to survive in the most hostile of environments. It is a poetic reminder that even when life drags us down, we can still grow. We can still find the light, and we can create beauty in the descent. The wind picks up in our garden now, a phantom gale that blows from only one direction. We turn to face the windswept style, or fukinagashi. Here, the invisible becomes visible. You cannot see the wind, but you can see what the wind has done. Visualize a tree growing on a lonely coastline, buffeted by the relentless sea breeze. Every branch, every twig, even the trunk itself leans emphatically in one direction. There are no branches on the windward side. The buds there were sheared off long ago. The bark on the windward side might be bleached white, stripped by salt and sand, while the leeward side holds the green foliage, sheltering in the lee of the trunk. The tree looks as if it is in motion, frantically streaming in the wind, yet it is perfectly still. It captures a specific moment of high drama and freezes it forever. To look at it is to feel the cool rush of air on your cheek, to hear the roar of the ocean. It is a masterpiece of dynamic tension. It speaks of endurance, of bending without breaking, of accepting the forces we cannot control, and finding a way to exist in harmony with them. We step back now, widening our view from the solitary hero to the collective community. We enter the realm of the forest style, or yosei. Here, a single pot, usually a large, shallow oval tray, holds not one tree, but an entire grove. It is a landscape in miniature. The artist plants an odd number of trees, 5, 7, 9 or more, to avoid the static symmetry of even numbers. There is always a mother tree, the tallest and thickest, the anchor of the group. The smaller trees surround her, leaning slightly outward as they reach for the light at the edge of the forest. The arrangement is masterfully calculated to create an illusion of vast depth. The largest trees are placed in the foreground, while smaller, thinner trees are placed in the back, tricking the eye into believing the forest stretches back for miles. Imagine walking into this miniature wood. The ground is carpeted with velvet moss. You can almost see a tiny path winding between the trunks, disappearing into the shadows. It brings a feeling of solitude and enclosure, the safe, hushed atmosphere of a deep woodland. It reminds us that nothing exists in isolation, that we're all part of a greater whole, standing together, sheltering one another. Finally, we arrive at the most abstract and poetic of forms, the literati style, or bunjin. This style breaks all the rules we have learned. It is the jazz of the bonsai world. Born from the ink paintings of Chinese scholars and poets, it prioritizes elegance and line over lushness. Picture a tall, slender trunk, impossibly thin for its height. It twists and turns with a calligraphy-like grace, rising high above the pot. There are no lower branches. The foliage is sparse, confined to a small, wispy crown near the very top. The bark is often rough and craggy, contrasting with the delicate feminine curves of the trunk. It looks like a tree that has grown in a dense forest, racing upward to find a patch of sunlight, shedding its lower branches along the way. It is minimalist, stark, and hauntingly beautiful. It demands that you look at the line, the gesture, the less is more. It is not about abundance, it is about essence. It feels like a sketch in the air, a poem written in wood. It invites the viewer to fill in the blanks, to appreciate the beauty of scarcity and the elegance of a refined, unburdened soul. As you gaze at this slender dancer against the backdrop of the night, you feel a sense of detachment from the material weight of the world, floating upward with the tree, light as a feather, drifting towards the stars. As we descend gently from the ethereal heights of the abstract literati, drifting back down toward the rich, dark soil of our imaginary garden, we find ourselves standing before the undisputed monarch of this miniature world. It is the Japanese black pine, known to the masters as kuromatsu. If the literati is a poem, the black pine is a warrior's anthem. Visualize the overwhelming sense of strength radiating from this tree. It is often called the king of bonsai, and as you look upon it, you understand why. The bark is not smooth. It is a rugged armour of thick dark grey scales, fissured and cracked like a dried riverbed or the skin of an ancient reptile. It speaks of impenetrable defences, of a life spent weathering the harshest of storms. Reach out with your mind's hand and touch the needles. They are not soft. They are stiff, sharp, and brilliantly dark green, growing in pairs from a single sheath. They stand erect, piercing the air with a vibrant energy. Unlike other trees that sway gently, the black pine holds its ground with a stoic rigidity. In the spring, visualize the candles, the vertical shoots of new growth, rising like green flames from the tips of the branches. The energy of the pine is masculine, powerful, and intense. It requires a firm hand to guide, a discipline of plucking the old needles to balance the energy. To sit before a black pine is to absorb its resilience. It grounds you, pulling your wandering spirit down into the earth, infusing you with a sense of unshakable stability and the courage to endure whatever winters may come. Turning from the rugged warrior, the atmosphere in our garden softens, shifting from the masculine yang to the delicate yin. We find ourselves in the presence of the queen, the Japanese maple, or momiji. The air here feels lighter, filled with a sense of grace and fluid movement. While the pine is about survival, the maple is about the exquisite, fleeting beauty of the passing seasons. Visualize the trunk. It is not rough, but smooth, often with the pale, grey-white texture of skin or fine parchment. It feels cool and sleek to the touch. The branches are slender and sweeping, dividing into finer and finer twigs that form a delicate lace against the sky. But it is the leaves that captivate us. Picture a single leaf, shaped like an open hand with 5 or 7 tapered fingers. In the spring they unfurl in a soft, blushing red or a tender, pale green, thin as paper, allowing the sunlight to glow through them like stained glass. As summer arrives, they deepen into a cool, refreshing canopy of emerald. And then, the grand finale, autumn. Imagine the transformation as the tree ignites with colour, burning crimsons, burnt oranges, and brilliant golds. It is a slow, silent fire that warms the soul. To watch a maple is to meditate on the cycle of change, to accept that beauty is transient and that there is a profound elegance in letting go, just as the tree gently releases its leaves to the wind. Drifting further along the garden path, we encounter a tree that seems to be a paradox of life and death, dancing together in a single form. This is the juniper, specifically the shimpaku. If the pine is strength and the maple is grace, the juniper is drama. It is the contortionist of the bonsai world. Visualize the live veins, ribbons of reddish-brown bark that twist and turn, pulsating with sap, transporting life from the roots to the foliage. These veins often wrap around dead, bleached wood, the skeletal remains of the tree's past. The foliage of the shimpaku is soft to the touch, unlike the sharp pine. It consists of scale-like needles that form tight, rounded clouds of bright green, resembling distinct puffs of smoke or mossy stones suspended in the air. But the true mesmerizing quality is the movement. The trunk rarely grows straight. It coils and loops, sometimes tying itself into knots. It looks like a dragon writhing in the mist. This shape is not born of ease, but of struggle. It mimics trees growing on high mountain peaks, twisted by heavy snows and constant winds. Yet, in this struggle, it has found a magnificent balance. It teaches us that our scars and our twists are part of our beauty, and that life can flourish even when it hangs by a single, winding thread. As the green of the juniper fades, a riot of colour blooms in our peripheral vision. We have arrived at the Satsuki azalea. While most bonsai are appreciated for their leaves and structure, the Satsuki is cherished for its floral explosion. The name Satsuki translates to fifth moon, referring to the lunar month when it blooms. Visualize a tree that is usually a quiet, humble mound of small, dark, hairy leaves. It is unassuming, blending into the background. But then, the season turns, and the tree transforms into a living bouquet. The flowers are trumpet-shaped, delicate, and vibrant. What makes the Satsuki magical is its genetic variability. A single tree can produce flowers of multiple colours, pure white, pink, red, and variegated stripes, all on the same branch. It is a canvas where nature paints with reckless abandon. Imagine the contrast of the bright, joyful petals against the dark, rough trunk. For a few weeks, the structure of the tree is almost hidden beneath this blanket of colour. It is a celebration of life's vibrancy, a reminder that within even the quietest soul, there is the potential for a spectacular, colourful bloom. When the flowers fade, the tree returns to its quiet green meditation, teaching us to appreciate the moments of glory while finding peace in the ordinary days. The flowers fall, the seasons cycle, and we move into the quiet dormancy of winter. The deciduous trees, the maples, the elms, the beeches, stand naked before us. This brings us to the appreciation of the winter silhouette. In the Western world, we often fear the loss of summer, but in the art of bonsai, the leafless state is a moment of profound truth. There is nowhere to hide. The lush foliage that covered the tree's floors is gone, revealing the skeleton beneath. Visualize the intricate architecture of the tree in winter. You can trace the line of the trunk, the primary branches, the secondary branches, all the way out to the finest microscopic twigs. It looks like an etching in black ink against a grey sky. There is a stark, haunting beauty in this vulnerability. It is silent and still. You can see the history of every prune, every wire, every decision made by the artist. It represents the soul of the tree, stripped of its adornments. To love the winter silhouette is to love the core of a being, not just its external presentation. It invites you to rest in the quiet cold, to find comfort in the bare essentials, knowing that the energy of life is sleeping safely within the buds, waiting for the sun. As we gaze closer at this naked winter tree, our focus narrows to the very tips of the branches, bringing us to the concept of ramification. This is the fractal geometry of nature. Visualize the main trunk splitting into two thick branches. Follow one branch as it divides into two smaller ones. Follow those as they split again and again and again. This exponential division is what creates the illusion of a giant ancient tree. A young tree has coarse, simple branches. An old tree has a cloud of thousands of tiny twigs. This is the winter lace we spoke of. Achieving this requires years of dedication. Imagine the patience of the artist season after season, pruning the tips to force them to divide, turning one twig into two. It is a mathematical multiplication of beauty. The density of these twigs creates a fine, hazy network that catches the light and holds the snow. It reminds us of the complexity of our own lives, how a single decision can branch out into endless possibilities, creating the rich, intricate pattern of our existence. It is a visual representation of the passage of time, frozen in wood. How does one achieve such fineness? We drift back to the heat of summer to witness the technique of defoliation. It seems counterintuitive, almost cruel, but it is an act of calculated renewal. Imagine a maple tree in June, full of large, lush leaves. The artist takes a pair of sharp, fine scissors and carefully cuts away every single leaf, leaving only the leaf stalks, or petioles, attached to the branches. The tree stands bare in the middle of summer, but this triggers a survival response. The tree, sensing the loss, rushes to produce a second flush of growth. Because it has less time before autumn, the new leaves that emerge are smaller, brighter, and more numerous. It is a way of manipulating scale, of tricking the tree into fitting the miniature proportions of its pot. It is a restart button. Visualize the fresh, tender leaves unfurling for the second time in 1 year, a second spring in the midst of summer. It teaches us that sometimes we need to strip away what we have grown to make room for something new, something more refined. That loss can be the catalyst for a more delicate and beautiful regeneration. But where do the greatest of these trees come from? We leave the garden bench and travel in our minds to the high, craggy mountains, to the concept of yamadori. This term refers to trees collected from the wild rather than grown in a nursery. Imagine hiking up a steep, rocky slope where the air is thin and cold. You're not looking for the perfect, straight Christmas tree. You're looking for the survivor. You're looking for the stunted pine growing out of a crack in a granite boulder, twisted by decades of avalanches, starved of nutrients, battered by ultraviolet light. These trees are naturally dwarfed by their harsh environment. They carry the spirit of the mountain within their fibres. A nursery tree is like a blank canvas. A yamadori is a finished painting by Mother Nature herself. The bark is ancient and plated. The shapes are impossible to replicate by human hands. Collecting one is a sacred, difficult task, requiring respect and permission. It involves carefully digging out the roots, wrapping them in moss, and carrying the tree down the mountain on your back. It is a rescue mission and an adoption. When you see a yamadori in a pot, you're looking at a being that has known true freedom and true suffering. It brings the wild, untamed energy of the peaks into the quiet civilization of the garden. From the vastness of the mountains, we zoom into the microscopic, to the tiniest class of bonsai, shohin and meimei. While some bonsai are two-handed heavyweights, these are the jewels of the art. Shohin means small good thing, usually no taller than 8 inches. Meim is even smaller, often bean-sized, small enough to sit on the tip of a finger. Visualize a fully formed pine tree with rugged bark and perfect branches that is only 3 inches tall. It defies logic. Holding a meim pot is an incredibly intimate experience. You must cradle it in your palm like a baby bird. Because the pot is the size of a thimble, it holds very little water and dries out efficiently, requiring constant vigilant attention. It is a relationship of pure devotion. These tiny trees capture the vastness of nature in the smallest possible space. They are like haiku poems, brief, concise, yet containing a whole world of feeling. They remind us that grandeur is not about size, it is about proportion and spirit. Even the smallest things can possess great dignity and profound beauty. Finally, we arrive at the philosophical heart that beats within all these concepts, wabi-sabi. This is not a technique, but a feeling, a lens through which to view the world. It is the appreciation of the imperfect, the impermanent, and the incomplete. In the Western mind, we often seek symmetry, polish, and newness. In the world of bonsai, we treasure the opposite. Visualize an old pot with a slightly uneven glaze, or a tree with a hollow trunk and a dead branch. These are not flaws, they are the fingerprints of time. Wabi speaks of simple, rustic, solitary beauty. Sabi is the bloom of time, the patina on a bronze statue, the moss on a stone, the grey of weathered wood. It is a beauty that is tinged with a sweet melancholy, an acknowledgement that nothing lasts forever. When you look at a bonsai through the eyes of wabi-sabi, you're not looking for a plastic perfection. You're looking for a story. You see the struggle, the age, the quiet dignity of existing. It invites you to embrace your own imperfections, your own aging, your own weathered bark. It tells you that there is a profound, aching beauty in the natural cycle of life and decay, and that in the quiet acceptance of this truth, there is deep, restful peace. Floating in this current of quiet acceptance, where the weathered and the worn are celebrated as the true bearers of beauty, we find ourselves drawn to the shadowed hollows of the ancient trunk. This brings us to the dramatic feature known as sabamiki, or the hollow trunk. In the philosophy of the perfect imperfection, nothing tells a story quite like a gaping void in the heart of a living being. Visualize a massive, venerable apricot or olive tree. its trunk split open by a lightning strike from a storm that raged a century ago. The wood inside has rotted away, returned to the earth, leaving behind a hard, calloused shell of bark and cambium. It is a cavern, a sanctuary of shadows. Peer into this darkness. It creates a profound sense of depth, pulling your eye inward, inviting you to imagine what tiny creatures might seek shelter there. A dormant butterfly, a spider spinning its silk. The hollow is not a sign of death. Rather, it emphasizes the tenacity of life. The tree continues to thrive, its canopy lush and green, the sap flowing through the thin remaining walls of the trunk. It surrounds the emptiness with life. This is a powerful visual meditation on the concept of the vessel. We are defined not just by our physical substance, but by the space we hold within. Feel the texture of the inner wood, perhaps bleached white and smooth as bone, contrasting with the rough dark bark on the outside. It is the visual echo of a survivor, a being that has been hollowed out by the tribulations of existence yet remains standing, dignified and whole in its brokenness. From the hollowed interior, our gaze travels downward to where the tree meets the earth, but here we encounter an obstacle, a massive rugged stone. This introduces us to the sekijoju, or root over rock style. In nature, a seed sometimes lands not in the soil, but on a mossy boulder. As it grows, its roots must travel, searching for the cool, damp earth below. Visualize the roots of a trident maple or a pine, thick and gnarled, gripping the stone like the fingers of a giant hand. They are muscular and taut, fused to the rock surface over decades of slow growth. The bark of the roots is craggy and aged, while the stone is cold, grey and immovable. There is a palpable tension here, a silent, slow-motion wrestling match between the organic and the inorganic. The roots embrace the rock, conforming to its every curve and fissure, encasing it in a cage of living wood. Eventually they reach the soil below, anchoring the composition. To look at this is to feel the sheer persistence of life. It speaks of a hunger for survival that overcomes the hardest of barriers. Imagine the sensation of the rough bark against the smooth, river-polished stone. It is a marriage of opposites, the fleeting, growing wood and the eternal, static stone, bound together forever in a sculptural embrace. Drifting from the roots that clasp the outside of the stone, we shift our perspective to a landscape where the tree and the stone are even more intimately connected. We arrive at Ishisaki, or the root in rock planting. Here, the tree does not sit atop the rock. It emerges from within it. Picture a jagged, vertical piece of slate, or a dark, porous volcanic rock, rising like a miniature mountain island from a sea of white sand. Within the natural crevices and pockets of this stone, soil is gathered, and from these tiny pockets, trees spring forth. These are not the towering giants of the forest floor, these are the stunted, tenacious pines of the high peaks. Their roots do not reach the pot. They're confined entirely within the rock's fissures. Visualize the intricate web of fine roots exploring the damp darkness inside the stone, drinking from the moisture held in the porous rock. It creates a self-contained ecosystem, a lonely island in a vast ocean. The water in the shallow tray below evaporates, creating a humid microclimate around the foliage. This style evokes a feeling of isolation and grandeur. It transports you to the misty peaks of Huangshan or the rocky coasts of Maine. It is a scene of dramatic solitude, asking us to find comfort in the quiet, rocky places where life clings delicately to the edge of the world. As we leave the solitary struggle of the rock dweller, we move toward a vision of family and unity. We encounter the kabudachi, or clump style. Here, we see what appears to be a small grove of trees, but as we look closer at the base, we realize they are all one organism. They are distinct trunks rising from a single, unified root system. Imagine a tree that was cut down long ago, and from the stump, new shoots emerged. Over time, these shoots thickened into trunks of their own, competing for light yet sharing the same lifeblood. The arrangement is never random. There is always a primary trunk, the thickest and tallest, surrounded by subordinate trunks that lean slightly outward, creating a collective dome-shaped canopy. It is a single silhouette made of many voices. The trunks are usually odd in number, 3, 5, 7, creating an asymmetry that feels natural and unforced. The base, where the trunks flare out from the root ball, is a solid fused mass of wood, a testament to their shared origin. This style radiates a sense of harmony and cooperation. It is the botanical equivalent of a family standing close together, protecting one another from the elements. There is a softness to the clump style, a lack of the tension found in the twisted junipers. It feels settled, established, and peaceful, a green monument to the bonds that hold us together. Sometimes, however, the family is born not from a stump but from a fallen giant. We drift now to the akadabuki, or raft style, a fascinating narrative of resurrection. Visualize an old tree in the forest that has been toppled by a fierce typhoon. It lies horizontal, its trunk pressed against the damp soil. But the roots are still connected, and the tree refuses to accept its end. The branches that once reached sideways now point upward toward the sun. Over years, the underside of the fallen trunk sends down new roots, and the upward-pointing branches thicken, transforming into a line of vertical trunks. In the bonsai pot, this story is recreated. A single log lies horizontally across the soil, half buried, its texture rough and mossy. Rising from it is a line of trees, seemingly a straight row of pines or elms. But if you scrape away a little moss, you find the connecting bridge, the old parent trunk, that unites them all. It is a forest that is actually one tree. The raft name comes from the visual of logs tied together floating on water. This style is a profound symbol of adaptability. It tells us that when life knocks us down, we do not have to rise back up in the same way. We can change our orientation, turn our branches into trunks, and create a new forest from the wreckage of the old self. As we wander through this green and brown world, we begin to crave a splash of colour, a sweetness in the air. We turn our attention to the class of bonsai known as mimono, or fruit-bearing trees. While the pines offer stoicism and the maples offer foliage, the mimono offer the gift of harvest. Visualize a crabapple tree in late autumn. The leaves have fallen, leaving the intricate skeleton of branches bare against the grey sky. But clinging to these branches are dozens of tiny spherical apples, no larger than peas. They glow in vibrant shades of crimson, scarlet and gold, bright jewels hanging in the cold air. They are miniature echoes of the sun. Or perhaps imagine a winter holly, its dark, glossy green leaves protecting clusters of bright red berries. These fruits are not for eating, they are for contemplating. They represent the culmination of the year's energy, the tree's offering to the future. There is a deep instinctual satisfaction in looking at a fruit-bearing tree. It taps into our ancestral memory of gathering, of abundance. It signals that the work of the spring and summer was successful. Watch as a snowflake drifts down and lands on a bright red crabapple, the white crystal melting against the waxy red skin. It is a moment of pure sensory contrast, the cold dormancy of winter kissing the lingering warmth of the harvest. Now, let your gaze fall from the branches down to the very floor of the container, to the velvet carpet that unifies the entire composition. We focus on coke, or moss. In the world of bonsai, moss is not a weed to be removed. It is a cultivated treasure. It is the skin of the earth. Visualize the texture, a deep emerald green softness that begs to be touched. It is composed of thousands of tiny star-shaped plants, packed so tightly they form a seamless mound. The moss serves a vital purpose. It seals the soil, keeping the moisture in and the roots cool. But aesthetically, it provides the sense of scale. To a human, it is moss. To the imaginary traveller in the bonsai landscape, it is a rolling meadow of tall grass. The colour of the moss fluctuates with the moisture, bright neon green when wet, softening to a sage or olive when dry. It has a scent too, the smell of a damp forest floor after rain, a musk of geosmin and wet earth. Growing moss is an art in itself, requiring misting and shade. It softens the transition between the heavy, dark trunk and the hard ceramic pot. It is the silence between the notes, the green quiet that allows the tree to sing. Beside this mossy expanse, often sitting in its own tiny separate pot, we find the shitakusa, or accent plant. This is the humble companion. A bonsai is rarely displayed alone. It needs context. If the bonsai is the mountain, the accent plant is the wildflower growing in the valley. It is usually a small tuft of grass, a fern, a hosta, or a wild strawberry. It is never showy enough to distract from the main tree. It exists to harmonize. Visualize a small rustic pot, perhaps a jagged stone or a piece of driftwood, holding a clump of slender ornamental grass. The grass blades arch gracefully, tipping in the imaginary wind. If the main tree is a heavy dark pine, the accent plant might be a light airy fern to provide contrast. If the tree represents summer, the accent plant might be a flowering violet. If it is winter, the accent might be a cluster of dry reeds. It grounds the bonsai in a specific season and environment. It adds a layer of wildness, a reminder that in nature, trees do not grow in isolation. They are surrounded by the undergrowth, the small, fleeting lives that cycle quickly beneath the ancient boughs. To fully understand how these elements come together, we must step back and visualize the sacred stage where they are presented. This is the tokonoma, the traditional Japanese display alcove. In a traditional home or a tea house, this is a recessed space in the wall, raised slightly above the floor. It is a space of reverence. The lighting here is different, soft, diffused, often coming from a single side window, casting long dramatic shadows that accentuate the depth of the tree. The tokonoma is not cluttered. It contains only 3 elements: the bonsai, the accent plant, and the scroll. It is a study in asymmetry and negative space. The empty space in the alcove is just as important as the objects. It allows the mind to rest. Visualize placing the tree in this space. You do not place it in the center. You place it slightly to one side, allowing the tree's movement to point toward the center. The silence in the tokonoma is palpable. It is a museum for one object, a chapel for nature. Standing before it, the rest of the room fades away. There is only the tree, the shadow, and the stillness. It is a frame that separates the art from the chaos of daily life, elevating a potted plant into a deity. Finally, our eyes rise to the back wall of this sacred alcove, to the kakejiku, or hanging scroll. This is the final piece of the Trinity. It creates the sky, the atmosphere, the context for the tree. It is a vertical painting or calligraphy on silk or paper, mounted on cloth rollers. If the bonsai is a windswept pine, the scroll might depict a full moon or a distant mountain peak, placing the tree high on a cliff at night. If the tree is a flowering cherry, the scroll might feature a poem about the fleeting nature of spring, or a painting of a small bird. The scroll sets the season and the time of day. It is the window into the world beyond the pot. Visualize the inkwash painting, faint misty mountains that fade into the white paper. The lack of detail in the scroll forces your imagination to fill in the gaps. It adds a vertical dimension to the horizontal spread of the tree's branches. The interplay between the 3-dimensional tree and the 2-dimensional painting creates a deep, resonant harmony. It is a dialogue between nature and art, between the living and the imagined, weaving a complete story that captures a single, perfect moment in the flow of time. As the ink of the scroll painting fades into the white mist of the paper, allowing our minds to drift from the 2-dimensional representation of a mountain to the physical embodiment of one, we lower our gaze to the companion that often sits beside the bonsai. Here, we encounter the silent brooding art of suiseki, or viewing stones. If the bonsai is the living spirit of nature, the suiseki is its eternal unmoving bone. Visualize a stone, no larger than a melon, resting on a custom-carved wooden seat. It is not a gemstone, sparkling and gaudy. It is a dark, dense rock, perhaps black as obsidian or deep slate grey, harvested from a rushing riverbed where centuries of water have smoothed its edges. But look closer, with the eyes of a dreamer. This is not merely a rock. In its contours, ridges and valleys, we see a vast landscape. We see a distant mountain range with a single high peak catching the moonlight. We see a waterfall of white quartz cascading down a cliff of basalt. We see an island rising from a misty sea. This is the art of suggestion. The stone is a microcosm of the earth itself, heavy and permanent. Imagine reaching out to touch the surface of the stone. It is cool, incredibly smooth, and hard. It grounds the energy of the room. Sometimes these stones are displayed wet, their surfaces glistening to mimic a mountain after a spring rain, the water intensifying the deep black colour. In the silence of the display alcove, the Suseki speaks of geologic time, of millions of years condensed into a single object, offering a profound counterpoint to the fleeting, seasonal changes of the tree beside it. Supporting this heavy stone, and indeed the bonsai pot itself, is the pedestal of the display, known as the dai or shoku. This is the stage upon which the actors stand. We turn our attention to the rich, warm wood of this display table. It is not a simple plank, but a masterpiece of joinery and craftsmanship, often made from rosewood, ebony, or quince. Visualize the grain of the wood, swirling like dark smoke trapped in amber. The wood is polished to a high sheen, reflecting the pot above it like a dark, still pool. Notice the legs of the table, curved gently like the legs of a tiger, or straight and slender with delicate scrollwork at the edges. The height of the table is critical. It lifts the bonsai up, separating it from the mundane floor, signalling that this is an object of reverence. Listen to the sound in your mind as the heavy ceramic pot is placed upon this wooden stand. A solid, dull thud followed by the slide of ceramic on polished wood, a sound of finality and placement. The die frames the composition, providing a boundary. It represents the forest floor, the earth, the foundation. It reminds us that beauty requires support, that even the most magnificent living things need a solid, stable base to rest upon. From the dark wood of the table, our imagination floats upward, seeking a shape that is the very definition of calm symmetry. We arrive at the hokidachi, or broom style. While the windswept trees spoke of struggle, the broom style speaks of perfect peace. Visualize a Japanese zelkova, or an elm tree standing in a quiet, windless field. The trunk rises straight and short like the handle of an upside-down broom. Then, at a single point, it explodes outward into a multitude of branches, radiating in every direction with perfect equality. It forms a dome, a soft, rounded silhouette against the sky. In winter, this style is a marvel of delicate engineering. The branches divide and subdivide into a fine haze of twigs, creating a fan-like tracery that looks like a drawing in charcoal. There is no conflict here, no dominant side, no leaning. It is a sphere of wood. To sit beneath such a tree, even a miniature one, is to feel protected, enclosed in a bubble of safety. The energy is contained, recirculating within the crown. It evokes the feeling of a calm Sunday morning, where the air is still and the world is in balance. It teaches us the beauty of equality, of spreading our energy evenly, creating a life that is rounded, full, and complete. As the seasons in our mind shift towards the crisp air of autumn, we encounter a unique paradox: the larch, or larix. It is a conifer, a cone-bearing tree like the pine, yet it possesses the soul of a maple. In the spring and summer, it is covered in needles, but they are not the sharp, stiff needles of the pine. Reach out and brush them with your mental fingertips. They are soft, tufted, and pliable, growing in little rosettes along the branches. They feel like brushes of green velvet, but the true magic happens when the cold winds blow. Unlike other evergreens that hold their colour, the larch turns a brilliant glowing gold. The entire tree becomes a torch of yellow light. Then, as winter deepens, the needles fall, leaving the branches bare. This is the deciduous conifer, a bridge between two worlds. In its naked state, you can see the tiny woody cones studding the branches, looking like miniature roses made of wood. The bark is flaky and rough, adding to the sense of rugged wilderness. The larch brings a specific mood to the bonsai garden, a rustic, high country feeling. It smells of resin and mountains. It reminds us that labels can be misleading, that one can be both strong and soft, evergreen in nature yet seasonal in behaviour, capable of shedding the old to survive the cold. Drifting from the soft needles of the larch, we find ourselves drawn to a texture that begs to be explored by touch. We stand before a Chinese quince or perhaps a Stuartia, trees famous not just for their leaves, but for their mesmerising bark. As these trees age, the outer layers of bark naturally exfoliate, peeling away in irregular patches. Visualise this mosaic of colours. As a flake of old, grey bark curls and drops off, it reveals a patch of fresh, smooth bark underneath, perhaps in shades of burnt orange, pale green, or creamy yellow. The trunk becomes a living map of camouflage, a dappled pattern of past and present. It looks like a watercolour painting, soft and fluid. Run your hand over this surface. It is cool and smooth, like polished stone or the skin of a serpent, interrupted by the slight ridges of the peeling layers. This shedding is a silent, slow-motion process of renewal. It creates a visual depth that absorbs the eye. It is a tree that wears its history on its skin, constantly revealing new layers of itself to the world. It teaches us that shedding our outer shell is a natural part of growth, that beneath the weathered, rough exterior, there is always something fresh, vibrant, and new waiting to be seen. To maintain such beauty, there is a ritual that takes place in the quiet corners of the workshop, a ritual of metal and stone. We focus now on the maintenance of the tools themselves, specifically the sharpening of the shears. This is a meditative act, a preparation for art. Visualize a rectangular whetstone sitting in a bath of water, soaking until it is saturated. You take the heavy steel shears, their blades dull from use, and place the beveled edge against the stone. Listen to the sound. Shh. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic friction, the sound of metal meeting stone. A grey slurry of water and stone grit forms, known as the sharpening mud. This mud is the abrasive that refines the edge. You move with a steady, repetitive motion, back and forth, back and forth. The mind empties of all other thoughts. There is only the angle of the blade and the rhythm of the hand. You're restoring the potential for sharpness, honouring the tool that allows you to create. When you wipe the blade clean, the edge gleams like a mirror, a line of pure silver light. It is ready to cut cleanly, to harm the tree as little as possible. This process reminds us that we too must take time to hone our edges, to rest and refine our skills, so that when we act, we do so with precision and grace. From the sharp edge of the blade, we move to a technique that seems like pure magic, the ability to create roots in thin air. This is the art of air layering. Imagine an old, beautiful branch high up on a tree. It has perfect movement, but it is just a branch. You wish it were a tree of its own. So, you perform a delicate surgery. You make 2 parallel cuts around the bark of the branch, peeling away a ring of bark to reveal the slippery white wood beneath. You have interrupted the flow of energy returning to the roots, but the flow of water upward remains. Now, you wrap this open wound in a ball of damp, long-fibred sphagnum moss. Visualize the moss, soft and sponge-like, smelling of the deep swamp. You wrap it in plastic to hold the moisture. It looks like a bandage on the branch. Inside this dark, damp cocoon, a miracle occurs. The tree, confused but desperate to survive, begins to push new roots out from the cut, directly into the moss. It is growing a new root system in the sky. After a few months, you see white root tips pressing against the plastic. You can then cut the branch below the new roots and plant it. You have cloned the tree, creating a new life from a part of the old. It is a lesson in potential, showing us that with the right conditions, We can put down new roots anywhere, even in the places we least expect. Sometimes, however, the goal is not to separate but to join. We witness the surgical art of grafting. Here we take a branch from one tree, the scion, and fuse it onto the roots or trunk of another. It is a marriage of bloodlines. Visualize the precision required. You make a small, clean incision in the trunk of a pine, cutting into the living cambium layer. You take a tiny shoot from a different pine, one with better needles or stronger growth, and shape its base into a wedge. You insert the wedge into the slot. The green layers must touch perfectly. The veins of life must align. You wrap the union tightly with grafting tape, sealing it against the air. It is a moment of high tension and hope. Over the coming weeks, the cells of the two trees will knit together, bridging the gap. The sap will begin to flow across the junction, and the two will become one. The old roots will now support the new foliage. It is a symbiotic union, a way of improving the whole by introducing something new. It speaks to us of connection, of the ability to heal and accept support, and how different strengths can be bound together to create something stronger than either could be alone. Sustaining all this growth, the knitting of tissues and the pushing of buds, requires nourishment. We turn our senses to the slow, organic rhythm of fertilizing. In the bonsai world, we do not use harsh blue chemicals. We use cakes, small round balls of fermented organic meal, often made of rapeseed, bone meal, or fish emulsion. Visualize placing these cakes gently on the surface of the soil, nestling them into the moss. They are hard and dry at first, but then the rain comes. Watch as the water soaks into the cake. It begins to soften, breaking down slowly. As it dissolves, it releases a rich, earthy aroma, a smell of fermentation and deep biology. It is the smell of the forest floor, of life recycling itself. The nutrients trickle down with the water, drop by drop, feeding the roots in a gentle, steady stream. It is not a rush of sugar. It is a slow, sustained meal. Over weeks, the cake disappears, returning entirely to the soil. This cycle reminds us of the value of slow sustenance, of feeding our souls and bodies with things that are real and lasting, rather than seeking the quick, fleeting burst of energy. Finally, after years of this care, the watering, the pruning, the wiring, the fertilizing, we arrive at an indefinable quality known as mochikomi. This is not a technique, it is a result. It translates roughly to holding in the pot, or the look of age achieved through containment. You cannot buy mochikomi, you can only wait for it. Visualize a tree that has been in a pot for 50 years. It has settled. The roots have thickened and fused, gripping the soil with a relaxed confidence. The bark has become plated and craggy, creating a texture that absorbs the light rather than reflecting it. The branches have stopped shooting wildly upward. They have thickened and divided into fine lace, drooping slightly with the weight of time. The apex of the tree is no longer pointy and eager, but rounded and dome-like, a sign of maturity. The tree looks comfortable. It fits its pot perfectly. There is a heaviness to it, a gravitational pull of dignity. It does not look like it is fighting the container anymore. It has become one with it. To witness mochikomi is to witness the grace of acceptance. It is the beauty of growing old, of softening the sharp edges of youth, and settling into a state of deep, resonant peace with one's place in the world. This sense of deep, resonant peace is not confined solely to the tree. It seeps into the very skin of the container that holds it. Just as the tree earns its character through the slow passage of years, so too must the pot. This brings us to the appreciation of Jedi, or the patina of age. In the world of the shiny and the new, a brand new pot with a glossy reflective surface is considered raw and immature. It is too loud, too bright. It distracts from the quiet dignity of the tree. But observe the pot of a master tree. It possesses a muted, softened quality. Visualize the surface of unglazed clay that has sat on a wooden bench. exposed to the sun, the rain, and the watering can for decades. Over time, the minerals in the water and the microscopic oils from human hands create a lustrous satin sheen. It is not a shine that reflects light, but a depth that absorbs it. You might see faint dark stains near the base, or tiny microscopic colonies of beneficial algae that lend the clay a soft greenish-grey hue. This is not dirt, it is history. It is a visual record of care. The pot feels warm and organic to the touch, like a river stone. This patina binds the pot to the earth, making the man-made object feel as though it were grown rather than fired in a kiln. It reminds us that there is a special beauty that can only be manufactured by time, a softening of edges that makes everything feel more comfortable and authentic. With the pot and tree fused in this harmonious age, we must now decide how to view them. This introduces the critical concept of showman, or the front. Unlike a tree in the wild, which can be viewed from any angle, a bonsai is a piece of art composed for a specific perspective. It has a face. Imagine walking slowly around a tree, looking for that single, perfect angle where everything aligns. The master spends hours, sometimes days, finding this degree of rotation. At the showmen, the trunk shows its most interesting movement, twisting perhaps to reveal its lifeline. The apex bows slightly toward you, a gesture of greeting and humility. The branches spread out like welcoming arms, embracing the viewer, with no branches pointing directly at your eyes, which would be an act of aggression. From this vantage point, the scars of pruning are hidden in the back, and the depth of the forest is maximized. It is the angle of greatest beauty and greatest truth. Standing at the showman feels like locking eyes with the tree. There is a connection, a recognition. It teaches us the importance of perspective, that while we are complex three-dimensional beings with flaws and scars, there is always an angle from which we can present our most gracious, balanced, and welcoming self to the world. To find this perfect angle, we utilize a simple yet essential tool, the turntable. Visualize a heavy cast iron or heavy plastic wheel sitting low on the workbench. It spins on high-quality bearings, silent and smooth. You place the heavy tree in the center. With a gentle push of your finger, the world begins to rotate. Watch as the tree spins in slow motion. The silhouette shifts and morphs like a shadow puppet. A branch that looked short suddenly elongates as it turns broadside. A trunk that looked straight reveals a hidden curve. The light plays across the foliage, catching different facets of the needles. It is a hypnotic dance of geometry. You can stop the rotation at any degree, stepping back to contemplate the new profile. Spin, pause, observe. The sound of the bearings is a low, comforting hum, a white noise of contemplation. This tool allows the artist to see the tree as a sculpture in the round, to work on the back with the same care as the front. It reminds us that to truly understand something, or someone, we must see them from all sides, observing the changing light and the hidden depth that are not immediately apparent. As the turntable comes to a gentle stop, let us focus on a specific species that captivates with its unique texture, the hinoki cypress. While the pine is needle-like and the maple is leafy, the hinoki is a study in fans. Visualize the foliage. It does not grow in single leaves, but in flat, scale-like sprays that resemble intricate green coral or delicate handheld fans. These fans arrange themselves in dense layered pads. The colour is a deep, rich, prehistoric green, shadowy and mysterious. But bring your face closer, and you will discover the sensory gift of the hinoki, its scent. It is one of the most fragrant woods in the world. When you trim the foliage or rub the bark, it releases a clean, spicy aroma, a blend of lemon, cedar, and dried ginger. It is a scent that clears the mind and opens the lungs. In Japan, this wood is used to build temples and bathhouses because the water resistance and the smell are considered sacred. A hinoki bonsai feels soft to the touch, the tips of the fans yielding gently to your fingers. It creates a texture of soft, rounded mounds, offering a visual and olfactory sanctuary, a place where the air is always fresh and sacred. From the soft fans of the cypress, we move to a texture that is rugged, almost geological. We stand before the cork-bark pine, or nishikimatsu. This is a tree that wears a coat of armour. While most trees develop bark slowly, the cork-bark pine grows thick, wing-like ridges of corky bark that protrude inches from the trunk. Visualise these ridges, deeply fissured, grey and craggy, looking like a series of mountain ranges running vertically up the tree. The gaps between the cork wings are dark canyons of shadow. The bark is soft and spongy to the touch, yet it looks as hard as a rock. This intense texture makes the tree look ancient, even when it is relatively young. It captures the essence of a tree that has withstood centuries of abrasive winds. The contrast between the heavy, dark, elephant skin trunk and the bright, fresh green needles is striking. It is a celebration of the protective layers we build. The bark is not a barrier to the world, but a testament to survival, a rugged, beautiful shield that adds character and dimension to the living spirit within. To maintain and preserve the stories told by the wood, especially the dead wood, the gin and shari we spoke of earlier, we use a liquid that smells of the earth's fiery core. This is lime sulphur. Visualize a small bottle containing a yellow-orange liquid. It carries the pungent volcanic scent of hot springs, a smell of sulphur and minerals. It is the smell of purification. Using a small brush, the artist paints this liquid onto the stripped dead branches. At first, the wood turns a bright, unnatural yellow, but as it dries and reacts with the oxygen and the sunlight, a chemical transformation occurs. The yellow fades, and the wood bleaches to a stark bone white. This fluid does two things. It preserves the wood, preventing rot and fungal decay, and it creates the dazzling visual contrast that defines the masterpiece. It freezes the wood in time. Watch the liquid soak into the grain, highlighting the twists and swirls of the timber. It is a process of honouring the dead parts of the tree, ensuring they remain part of the living composition. It reminds us that preservation requires care, and that sometimes we must apply a balm to our old wounds to turn them into beautiful white scars that testify to our history. Softening this starkness, we turn our gaze to the cascading beauty of the wisteria. Most bonsai are trees. The wisteria is a vine that has been taught to stand. It is a creature of the spring. For most of the year, it is a tangle of muscular, twisting trunks, looking like writhing snakes or braided rope. But in late spring, it exhales a breath of pure magic. Visualize the long, drooping racemes of flowers hanging down from the branches like purple stalactites. They sway with the slightest breeze, a curtain of lavender and violet. The scent is intoxicating, sweet, heavy, and honeyed, filling the entire garden. A wisteria bonsai in full bloom is a waterfall of colour. The flowers open from the top of the cluster down to the tip, prolonging the display. The bees love them, their gentle buzzing adding a soundtrack to the visual feast. Because the flowers hang down, the tree is often displayed on a tall stand, allowing the blossoms to drift freely in the air. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated romance, a fleeting explosion of beauty that teaches us to savour the peak moments of life, for they are as heavy and sweet as they are temporary. To care for these roots, to settle them into their homes, we use a tool that is humble yet indispensable, the bamboo chopstick. It is not the lacquered utensil of a restaurant, but a raw, sturdy stick of bamboo, often sharpened to a point. During the repotting ceremony, this stick becomes the extension of the artist's hand. Visualize the fresh soil being poured around the roots, the dry granular akadama. It sits loosely, full of air pockets that could dry out the roots. The artist takes the chopstick and begins to work it into the soil with a rapid vibrating motion. Poke, wiggle, settle. Poke, wiggle, settle. It is a rhythmic, percussive action. You can see the level of the soil sinking as the grains slide past one another, locking into place, filling the voids between the roots. It is not about compacting the soil into a brick, but about tucking the tree in, ensuring every root is embraced by the earth. The sound is a soft scratching against the ceramic pot. It is a labour of detail ensuring stability. It teaches us that the big changes, the repotting, only work if we attend to the tiny details, the chopstick work, settling the foundation one grain at a time. Once the work is done, the tree is placed not on the ground, but on a specialised outdoor shelf known as the monkey pole or tea stand. Visualise a garden of these stands. They are simple wooden posts driven into the ground, topped with a small flat platform just large enough for one tree. They look like a field of mushrooms. By elevating the tree to eye level, we achieve two things. First, it allows us to engage with the tree face to face, honouring its stature. We do not look down on it, we look at it. Second, and more importantly, it exposes the tree to the free movement of the air. The wind can circulate under the pot, through the branches, keeping the foliage healthy and free of pests. The light hits the tree from all sides, reflecting off the ground. Visualize walking through a garden of these solitary pedestals. Each tree stands alone in its glory, yet they are part of a regimented community. It creates a sense of order and space. It reminds us that to thrive, we need to be lifted up. We need fresh air circulating around us, and we need our own platform on which to stand. Finally, moving quietly among these stands, we see the figure of the apprentice, or deshi. The path to mastery in bonsai is not a sprint. It is a marathon of humility. For the first few years, the apprentice is rarely allowed to prune or wire a masterpiece. Their task is water, and their task is the broom. Visualize the rhythmic, sweeping motion of a traditional broom made of twigs or straw. Swish, swish, swish. They are sweeping the moss, cleaning the benches, clearing the fallen needles. It seems like menial labour, but it is the primary education. By cleaning the space, they learn to see. They notice which tree is dropping needles, which soil is drying out too fast, which bud is swelling. They absorb the rhythm of the garden through the soles of their feet and the handle of the broom. It is a practice of silencing the ego. The sound of the sweeping is a meditation, a heartbeat of the garden. It creates a space of purity where the art can exist. It teaches us that true mastery begins with service, with the quiet, repetitive care of the environment, and that before we can shape the world, we must first learn to keep it clean. As the rhythmic swish of the apprentice's broom fades into the meditative silence of the garden, leaving the moss pristine and the air still, our attention is drawn to the workbench where the master's tools are laid out on a soft leather cloth. Among them lies a strange and specific instrument, the concave cutter, or mateira kiri. It is the surgeon's scalpel of the bonsai world. Visualize the shape of its blades. Unlike normal scissors that cut straight across, these jaws are curved like a crescent moon or the scoop of a spoon. They are designed not just to sever, but to hollow. When a branch must be removed, a flat cut would leave a stub that heals into an unsightly bump, a blemish on the smooth line of the trunk. But the concave cutter scoops out a small depression into the wood, a shallow crater. Imagine the sensation of using this tool, the resistance of the wood, the decisive snap as the cut is made, and the clean, hollow wound left behind. This hollow is intentional. It anticipates the future. It understands that the tree's healing energy will roll inward, filling the depression. It is a profound lesson in foresight. Sometimes, to heal cleanly and without a scar, we must cut a little deeper than the surface, removing the root of the issue so that the new growth can bridge the gap smoothly, leaving the trunk seamless and whole. This healing process, which the concave cutter initiates, is a slow, biological miracle known as callus formation. We move our focus now to the very edge of the cut, where the living tissue meets the air. This is the domain of the cambium, the thin green layer of life just beneath the bark. Visualize the tree's reaction to the wound. It does not bleed, it builds. Over the weeks and months, a roll of smooth, lighter-coloured tissue begins to swell from the edges of the cut. It looks like a wave of molten wax, or the rolling lip of a donut slowly creeping inward, millimetre by millimetre. This is the callus, the tree's scar tissue. It is a slow-motion embrace, sealing off the heartwood from bacteria and rot. Watch in your mind's eye as the ring of callus tightens, shrinking the hole in the centre until one day the edges meet and fuse. The wound is gone. In its place is a slightly lighter patch of bark, a cicatrix, a memory of the branch that once was. It is a texture of resilience. To run your finger over a fully healed cut, smooth and flush with the trunk, is to touch the tree's capacity for self-repair. It reminds us that wounds are not permanent states, but invitations for new growth to cover the past. Drifting from the smooth scars of the maples and pines, we encounter a tree that twists its very history into its trunk. The pomegranate, specifically the twisted trunk variety known as Nejikan. While other trees may grow straight or curve gently, the Nejikan pomegranate spirals. Visualize the trunk as a thick, wet towel that has been wrung out by a giant hand. The bark strips spiral upward from the roots to the apex, creating deep helical grooves. This is not wired. It is the tree's natural way of being. The bark itself is flaky and ancient-looking, shedding in thin strips to reveal smooth greyish patches beneath. But the drama of the trunk is matched by the joy of its flowers. In the heat of summer, when most trees are just green, the pomegranate erupts with trumpet-shaped blossoms in a vibrant neon coral or deep orange red. They look like little fires burning on the tips of the branches, and later, these fires cool into fruit, heavy spherical globes that hang like ornaments, turning from green to a leathery red. The contrast between the gnarled, suffering trunk and the festive, jewel-like fruit is a visual feast. It speaks of the sweetness that can emerge from a life of twists and turns, a reminder that a convoluted path can still bear the most beautiful fruit. Now, let us journey beneath the surface, to the very bottom of the pot, to a hidden piece of engineering that makes all this life possible. We visualize the potting mesh. Before the soil is ever poured, before the tree is ever planted, the artist prepares the vessel. The large drainage holes in the ceramic pot are necessary for water to escape, but they are too large for the soil to stay in. So we cut small squares of plastic mesh, grid-like screens that resemble stiff black fabric. But we do not simply lay them there. We must secure them. Visualize the butterfly tie. We take a small piece of aluminum wire, bend it into a U shape, and thread it through the mesh and the hole. On the underside of the pot, we twist the ends of the wire, tightening the knot. It looks like a small metallic butterfly resting on the bottom of the pot. This hidden detail is crucial. It prevents the soil from washing away, and it stops slugs and woodlice from crawling up into the sanctity of the root ball. It is the unseen guardian. No one will ever see these mesh screens once the tree is planted, but without them, the ecosystem would collapse. It teaches us the value of the foundational work, the hidden preparations that support the visible beauty, the safety nets we weave that hold our world together. Rising from the hidden mesh to the sun-drenched canopy, we find ourselves transported to the dry, rocky hillsides of the Mediterranean. We stand before the olive tree, Olea europaea. This is a tree of peace and immense antiquity. Unlike the delicate maple, the olive is a survivor of heat and drought. Visualize the leaves. They are small, lance-shaped and leathery. On top they are a dull, dusty green, but underneath they are a shimmering, silvery grey. When the wind blows through an olive bonsai, the tree seems to flash and sparkle as the silver undersides catch the light. It is a tree of light. The trunk of an old olive is a masterpiece of sculpture. It swells and bulges, often forming a massive squat base that looks like melted wax or flowing lava solidified in rock. It is common to find deadwood or euro on olives, natural hollows where the wood has rotted away, leaving a shell of living bark. Yet the tree persists, immortal and stubborn. It evokes the scent of hot earth, dry grass, and the faint, savoury aroma of curing olives. To care for an olive is to connect with the cradle of civilization. It feels ancient and wise, a tree that has seen empires rise and fall and simply continues to grow, slow and steady, in the sun. As our eyes travel up the rugged trunk of the olive or the pine, we eventually reach the very top, the crown, the apex. In Japanese, this is the shin. Wiring and styling the apex is often the most difficult and delicate part of the creation process. It is the finishing touch, the head of the statue. A young tree in nature often has a pointy spear-like top, racing upwards to compete for height. But an old tree, a bonsai tree, has given up that race. It has reached its ceiling. Visualize the apex not as a point, but as a dome. The branches here are short, dense, and ramified. We carefully wire them to curve downwards and outwards, creating a rounded helmet of green. This roundness signifies maturity. It softens the silhouette, bringing the eye to a gentle rest. The apex bows slightly forward, towards the viewer, acknowledging your presence. Sometimes, in a pine or juniper, the very tip of the apex is dead, a spike of white gin reaching for the sky, while the living branches form a cup around it. This is a tenjin, a heavenly drift of dead wood. It points to the source of all life, the sun. The apex unifies the tree's movement. It is the resolution of the story told by the trunk. It represents the wisdom of stopping, of rounding off our sharp edges and sheltering the world beneath us. Suddenly, the light in our garden shifts. The bright sun is obscured by soft grey clouds, and the air grows heavy and cool. A gentle rain begins to fall. This is a sensory blessing for the bonsai. While the watering can is consistent, the natural rain is magical. Visualize the droplets falling from the sky. They are softer, oxygenated, and charged with nitrogen from the atmosphere. The rain cleanses the foliage in a way a hose never can. Listen to the sound of the garden in the rain, the soft pat-pat-pat on the leaves, the rhythmic dripping from the eaves, the deepening silence of the birds. The colours transform. The dry, dusty bark turns a rich, saturated black or deep red. The stones in the garden glisten like polished gems. The moss swells, turning from a pale velvet to a vibrant neon sponge. There is a smell that rises from the pots, petrichor, the distinct earthy scent of rain hitting dry soil. It is a smell of relief. The trees seem to relax, their pores opening to drink in the moisture. Standing under the shelter of the eaves, watching the bonsai drink the rain, is a moment of profound connection with the elements. It reminds us that nature provides the best nourishment, and that sometimes a grey, rainy day is exactly what is needed for deep restorative growth. The rain clears and the mist settles, transporting our imagination across the sea from Japan to the vast mystical landscapes of China. We step into the world of penjing. While Japanese bonsai often focuses on the perfection of a single tree, Chinese penjing is the art of the landscape. It is panoramic storytelling. Visualize a long, shallow tray made of white marble or soapstone. Inside, it is not just a tree, but a world. There are jagged rocks cemented together to form soaring mountain ranges that dwarf the trees planted upon them. And there is water, real water, or perhaps white sand raked to look like a river flowing between the cliffs. But the most charming difference is the inclusion of figurines. Look closely, and you might see a tiny ceramic mud man sitting on a cliff edge. He might be a fisherman holding a bamboo pole, or a scholar reading a scroll, or two sages playing a game of Go under the shade of the pine. These figures give the landscape scale and narrative. They invite you to project yourself into the scene. You are the tiny fisherman, you are the scholar. Penjing is more whimsical, more wild, and less manicured than bonsai. It captures the spirit of the Chinese scroll paintings, the mist, the mountains, and the tiny human presence amidst the grandeur of nature. It invites us to play, to imagine, and to lose ourselves in a miniature world of fantasy, Returning to the specificity of species, we find ourselves drawn to a tree that grips the rock with a ferocity unmatched by others, the trident maple, or kaidi. This tree is a powerhouse of growth. Visualize the leaf. Unlike the five-fingered Japanese maple, this leaf has 3 distinct lobes, looking like the footprint of a duck or the trident of Poseidon. The leaves are thick, glossy, and turn a brilliant gradient of orange, red, and yellow in the autumn. But the true power of the trident lies in its roots. It is the champion of the root over rock style we visualized earlier. The roots of the trident maple grow fast and thicken quickly. Imagine planting a young trident over a jagged rock and burying it. Within a few years, the roots will have swollen, fusing together and crushing themselves against the stone, creating a grip that looks prehistoric. As the tree ages, the bark exfoliates in flakes, leaving a mottled, buff-coloured trunk that looks muscular and strong. The trident maple is a tree of vigour and regeneration. It tolerates heavy pruning and bounces back with enthusiasm. It is a symbol of robust health, teaching us that with a strong grip on our foundation, we can grow with speed and vibrant energy. Finally, we arrive at a concept that is not a thing, but the absence of a thing. We contemplate ma, or negative space. In the West, we often feel the need to fill every silence with sound, every corner with objects. In the aesthetics of bonsai, the empty space is just as real and important as the wood and the leaves. Visualize the space between the branches of a pine. It is not just nothing, it is a shaped void. It is a window that allows the viewer to see through the tree to the background, to see the trunk behind the foliage, to see the light. If a tree is too dense, a solid wall of green, it feels suffocating and heavy. It blocks the imagination. But by pruning away branches, by creating these pockets of ma, we allow the tree to breathe. We create a rhythm of form and emptiness. Branch, space. Branch, space. It is the silence between the notes that makes the music. Look at the empty space in the pot, the area of moss where no tree grows. This asymmetry creates tension and balance. Ma invites the viewer's mind to enter the composition. It teaches us the profound value of emptiness in our own lives, the need to clear away the clutter, to create pauses in our day, to leave room for the light to come through, and to understand that it is the open spaces that give definition to the substance of our existence. And so, resting in this spacious quiet, in the comfortable silence between the branches, we feel the weight of the world lifting, replaced by the light, airy potential of the void. In that profound, airy silence of ma, where the empty space holds as much weight as the solid matter, we begin to sense a change in the atmosphere. The cool, crisp air of the high mountains warms, becoming heavy, humid, and rich with the scent of wet earth and tropical rain. We drift south, away from the pines and maples to the realm of the ficus, specifically the banyan style. Here, the empty space we just contemplated is not left empty. It is colonized by a curtain of roots. Visualize a massive spreading canopy of thick, waxy oval leaves, a deep glossy green that reflects the filtered jungle sunlight. But the true wonder of the ficus is its refusal to be bound by the soil alone. From its heavy horizontal branches, it sends down thin, thread-like tendrils, aerial roots, seeking the earth. In the mist of our imagination, watch these roots descend like slow, solidified rain. When they touch the soil, they thicken, lignify, and transform into pillar-like trunks. Over time, a single tree becomes a forest, a one-tree grove. Walk among these pillars in your mind. It is a labyrinth of wood, a cathedral of roots that blurs the line between trunk and root, between air and earth. The bark is smooth, often a pale grey or warm beige, feeling like cool, living skin under your hand. The banyan style offers a feeling of encompassment, of being surrounded and sheltered by a living entity that is constantly expanding, constantly grounding itself, turning the very air into a foundation. Emerging from the dense, multi-trunked labyrinth of the jungle, our vision clears, and we focus on a simpler, more intimate relationship between two forms. We arrive at the sokan, or twin trunk style. This is a story of partnership and origin. Visualize a single root system, strong and established in the mossy soil. From this one base, the trunk splits not high up in the branches, but at the very bottom, close to the earth. Two trunks rise together side by side, but they are not equal, and this is the key to their harmony. There is always a primary trunk, the father or mother, which is thicker, taller, and more upright. Beside it stands the secondary trunk, the son or daughter, thinner, shorter, and leaning slightly outward to catch its own share of the light. They are distinct, yet inseparable. If you were to cut one, the other would bleed. Visualize the canopy they create together. They do not compete, they cooperate to form a single triangular silhouette of foliage. The branches of the larger tree extend over the smaller one, offering shelter, while the smaller tree's branches reach out to fill the lower spaces. It is a portrait of familial love and protection, a botanical embrace frozen in time. To gaze upon a sokan is to feel the comfort of companionship, the reassurance that we do not have to stand alone, that our roots are shared, and that there is a natural, beautiful balance in leaning on one another. From this duality, we travel back through the eons to witness a singular survivor, a living fossil that has watched the rise and fall of dinosaurs. We stand before the ginkgo biloba. This tree is unique in the botanical world, a bridge between the ferns and the conifers. Visualize the leaves. They are not needles, nor are they broad leaves. They are shaped like distinctive little green fans, or the footprints of a prehistoric duck. They have a leathery texture, tough and resilient. The bark of an old ginkgo is deeply fissured, corky and pale grey, speaking of immense age. But the true magic of the ginkgo arrives with the shortening days of autumn. Unlike the fiery reds of the maple, the ginkgo turns a uniform, luminous gold. It glows with an inner light, as if it has stored the sun of the entire summer within its leaves, and then, often in a single night of frost, the tree drops its entire canopy. Visualize the ground beneath the tree the next morning, covered in a solid carpet of golden fans. It is a scene of dramatic transience. On very old specimens, you might see chichi or nipples, stalactite-like aerial roots forming on the trunk, dripping downwards like melted wax. The ginkgo brings a feeling of endurance and ancient wisdom to the garden, a calm assurance that life persists through all cataclysms, turning gold before it rests. The golden carpet fades, swept away by the winds of winter, and we wait in the darkness for the first blush of spring. It arrives not with green, but with a cloud of fragile pink. We are in the presence of the flowering cherry, the sakura. In the world of bonsai, this tree is revered not for its shape or its age, but for its moment. For 50 weeks of the year, it is a quiet, unassuming tree with dark horizontal lenticels on its polished copper-coloured bark. But for 2 weeks, it becomes the centre of the universe. Visualize the buds swelling, turning from brown to deep pink. Then, the explosion. The entire tree is smothered in blossoms, so dense that you cannot see the branches. They are soft, pale pink, or stark white, hovering like a mist around the pot. It is a beauty so intense it hurts slightly to look at. And then, the inevitable happens. The wind blows, the petals begin to fall. They drift down like pink snow, landing on the dark moss, landing on the water of a nearby basin. This is the philosophy of mono no aware, the pathos of things, the bittersweet awareness that beauty is beautiful precisely because it does not last. To sit with a cherry bonsai is to practice being in the absolute present, to cherish the breath you're taking right now, knowing that like the blossom, this moment is fleeting and precious. As the petals scatter, we look to capture a piece of this wild beauty and hold it in our hands, stripping away the heavy ceramic pot entirely. We enter the whimsical world of kokedama, or moss ball. This is bonsai liberated from the container. Visualize the roots of a small fern, a hosta, or a young pine, encased not in a hard pot, but in a sphere of sticky black keto mud and akadama soil. This ball of earth is then wrapped in a skin of vibrant green sheet moss and wound round and round with invisible fishing line or natural jute twine to hold it together. It is a planet of soil. You can hold it in your palm, feeling the weight, the dampness, the squish of the moss. It feels organic and alive, a direct connection to the earth without the barrier of fired clay. Often, these moss balls are not placed on benches, but suspended from the ceiling by strings. Visualize a floating garden of these green orbs, slowly rotating in the air near a sunlit window. They look like green planets in a personal solar system. Watering them involves submerging the entire ball in a bowl of water, watching the bubbles rise as it drinks. It is a playful, tactile form of the art, bringing a sense of lightness and levity, reminding us that sometimes we can let go of our heavy foundations and simply float. Drifting on the air with the floating moss balls, we find a tree that mimics this downward flow, surrendering completely to the pull of gravity. We encounter the weeping style, or Shider Zukuri. While pines and junipers strive upward, the weeping willow or the weeping cherry pours itself downward. Visualize the trunk rising up, perhaps thick and gnarled, but the branches are thin, flexible whips that cascade down like water flowing over a cliff edge. The foliage hangs in long, slender curtains. When a gentle breeze moves through the garden, the weeping tree is the first to respond. The branches sway and dance, a soft, rhythmic undulation that is hypnotic to watch. Sway, return, sway, return. It is the visual equivalent of a lullaby. The leaves of the willow are long and lance-like, creating a texture of fine, falling rain. There is a sense of melancholy in this style, but it is a sweet, peaceful melancholy. It represents the grace of yielding, of not fighting the forces of the world but flowing with them. To sit beneath the curtain of a weeping bonsai is to feel enclosed, veiled from the outside world, safe behind a wall of gently moving green. From the soft, swaying curtains of the willow, we transition to a texture that is hard, dense, and incredibly stoic. We stand before the boxwood, or buxus. If the willow is water, the boxwood is stone. Visualize the leaves. They are tiny, oval, and leathery, as deep, dark, permanent green. They grow so thickly that they form a solid mass, a wall of foliage that light can barely penetrate. The wood of the boxwood is legendary. It is creamy yellow, incredibly hard and heavy, so dense it barely floats. It is the wood used for woodblock prints and chess pieces. In bonsai, this density allows for carving. The trunk often features yuro, hollows, or twisted muscular veins that look like flexed anatomical muscles under the skin of the bark. But lean in closer and you will notice the scent. The boxwood has a distinct musky aroma, especially when the sun warms the leaves. It is an earthy, primitive smell, ancient and grounding. The tree takes decades to grow thick. It is a creature of immense patience. It teaches us the value of density and slow accumulation, of building our character layer by layer, leaf by leaf, until we are solid and unshakable. Sometimes, however, age is an illusion, a clever trick played by the artist to honour the dead. We discover the technique known as tanuki, or the phoenix graft. In the wild, we often see a live vein of wood running up a dead, bleached skeleton of a tree. To recreate this in a pot with a young tree is nearly impossible in a single human lifetime, so the artist cheats time. Visualize a beautiful, weather-beaten piece of driftwood, a dead log with interesting twists, holes, and bleached white spikes. It looks like a relic from a mountaintop. Now, visualize the artist carving a deep groove or channel running up the back of this dead log. They take a young, flexible whip of a juniper, alive and vigorous, and press it into this groove. They nail it in place with brass pins, wrapping it tightly. Over years, the young tree expands, its bark swells and locks into the dead wood. The two become indistinguishable. The living foliage appears to burst from the ancient dead trunk. It is a phoenix rising from the ashes. It is a controversial technique among purists, but to the dreamer, it is a beautiful story of support. The dead past supports the living future. The old wood gives the young tree stature. The young tree gives the old wood life. It is a symbiosis of generations, a visual fable about standing on the shoulders of those who came before. Leaving the vertical rise of the phoenix, our gaze drops to the horizontal plane, to a surface that reflects the sky. We are looking at a suiban. This is a specialized ceramic tray, very shallow, with no drainage holes. It is designed to hold not soil but water. Visualize the surface of the ceramic, often a deep midnight blue or a dark earth tone, glazed to look wet even when dry. We fill the suiban with a thin layer of water and perhaps a scattering of fine river sand. In this water, we place a viewing stone, suiseki, or a rock planting. The water acts as a mirror, doubling the image of the stone, creating a sense of infinite depth. It represents the ocean, a lake, or a flooded rice paddy. The edge of the water against the rim of the tray creates a tension, a boundary between the contained world and the vastness outside. The stillness of the water is critical. Any vibration ruins the reflection. It demands a quiet environment. Looking into a suiban is like looking into a scrying pool. It pulls your focus down and in, calming the mind, asking you to reflect on your own surface, to become as still as the water so that you may see the world clearly. Finally, emerging from the dark water, we find a tree that has haunted the churchyards and forests of Europe for millennia, the yew, or taxus. This is the tree of immortality. It is capable of regenerating from the oldest, deadest wood, sending out fresh green shoots from a stump that looks like it died a century ago. Visualize the wood. It is a rich, reddish purple, often hollowed out by time, contrasting vividly with the stark white deadwood gin that the artist creates. The foliage is dark, flat, and soft, arranged in spirals but twisted to appear in two flat rows. It absorbs the light, creating deep shadows within the canopy. But the most striking feature appears in autumn, the arils. Unlike the dry cones of the pine, the yew produces soft, fleshy berries. They're a bright, translucent scarlet, cup-shaped, holding a dark seed in the centre. They look like drops of blood or ruby jewels against the dark green needles. But beware, the seed is poisonous, as is the foliage. It is a tree of duality, beauty and danger, life and death, ancient decay and vibrant regeneration. It commands respect. To sit with a yew bonsai is to sit with a watcher of history, a silent guardian that understands the long, slow game of survival better than any other living thing. As the dark green boughs of the yew settle into the shadows of our mind, we feel a profound sense of continuity, a knowledge that life circles endlessly, regenerating, persisting, and finding beauty in the darkness. From the shadows of the ancient poisonous yew, where life and death dance in a slow, eternal embrace, we drift toward the water's edge, seeking a tree that finds its sanctuary not in the dry earth, but in the submerged silence of the swamp. We find the bald cypress, or Taxodium disticum. This is a creature of the wetlands, a tree that defies the rule that roots must breathe air. Visualize a shallow basin filled with water, simulating the bayous of the American South. The trunk of the cypress flares wide at the base, fluted and buttressed like a Gothic cathedral, designed to stand firm in the shifting mud. The bark is fibrous, reddish-brown, and peels in long, vertical strips that feel like soft fur or shredded velvet under your fingertips. But the true wonder lies in the knees. These are strange, woody projections that rise up from the roots, breaking the surface of the water like stalagmites in a cave. They are the tree's snorkels, reaching for oxygen in a drowned world. The foliage is feathery and light, a bright electric green in spring that looks like fern fronds. Unlike most conifers that keep their needles, the bald cypress is deciduous. In autumn, the feathers turn a deep rusty copper, the colour of an old penny, before drifting down to float on the surface of the water basin. To sit with a bald cypress is to feel the stillness of the lagoon, the heavy, humid air, and the peace of a life lived with one's feet in the cooling water. As the humid air of the swamp rises, it carries us further south, crossing the equator into the heat of the tropics to encounter a tree that possesses a secret nocturnal rhythm, the Brazilian rain tree. This is a tree that sleeps when you sleep. Its trunk is a masterpiece of contortion, often flattened and twisted, covered in a smooth, exfoliating bark that flakes away to reveal patches of green and grey, appearing almost like camouflage or the skin of a python. It is armed with sharp thorns, small daggers that protect its delicate beauty. But watch closely as the sun begins to set in your mental garden. The leaves of the rain tree are compound, made of delicate oval leaflets. As the light fades, a biological mechanism triggers, and the leaves slowly fold upward, closing like the pages of a book or hands pressed together in prayer. It is a visible shutting down, a conservation of energy and moisture. The tree transforms its silhouette completely for the night, becoming thinner, quieter. In the morning, as the light returns, the leaves unfurl again to catch the sun. This daily cycle of opening and closing creates a profound sense of kinship. It is a living reminder that rest is an essential part of existence, that even the trees must close themselves off from the world to recharge in the safety of the dark. From the tropical warmth, we are transported back to the biting chill of late winter, where the snow still blankets the garden. Here, standing stark and black against the white drift, is the Japanese apricot, or This tree is the herald of spring, the brave soul that blooms while the rest of the world is still frozen. Visualize the bark. It is rough, craggy, and seemingly dead, distinctively black and charcoal grey. It looks like iron that has been pitted by rust. The branches are angular and sharp, zigzagging with a nervous staccato energy. There are no leaves yet, only the cold, hard wood. But emerging directly from this dark, rough bark are buds of incredible delicacy. They pop open to reveal small, round flowers in shades of white, pink, or deep crimson. They look like drops of blood or flakes of snow resting on the blackened branches. And then the scent hits you. It is a spicy, sweet perfume, reminiscent of cloves and jasmine, that carries for miles on the cold winter air. It is the scent of hope. To view a flowering is to witness the contrast between the old, rugged body and the young, vibrant spirit. It teaches us that beauty can flourish in the harshest conditions and that the sweetest flowers often bloom on the roughest branches. The scent of the apricot fades into the cool air, and we shrink our perspective down, all the way down, to the very genesis of life. We contemplate the art of misho, or growing bonsai from seed. This is the path of the ultimate optimist. Visualize holding a single seed in your palm, perhaps the winged seed of a maple or the hard brown nut of a pine. It is hard, dry, and seemingly inert. But locked inside this tiny shell is the blueprint of a giant, a genetic code waiting for the signal to uncurl. You bury it in a tray of soft, sandy soil and cover it with a dusting of white grit. Then you wait. You wait through the rain, through the silence, and then the miracle. A tiny green loop breaks the surface of the soil. It pulls itself up, shedding the seed casing like a hat, and unfurls its first two leaves, the cotyledons. They are simple, generic leaves, the solar panels that power the true leaves that will follow. This tiny sprout is vulnerable. A single heavy raindrop could crush it. To grow a bonsai from seed is to commit to a 20 or 30-year journey. It is an act of pure faith. It slows the heart rate, shifting your perception of time from hours and days to decades and centuries. It reminds us that every great-grandfather tree began as this fragile green loop, and that great things are born from small, quiet beginnings. As the seedling strengthens and grows, its roots begin to explore, tangling with one another in the darkness of the pot. To manage this subterranean world, we reach for a tool that looks fearsome but is used with gentle precision, the root hook, or commode. It is a steel instrument with 1, 2, or 3 curved claws attached to a wooden handle. It resembles a miniature garden cultivator or a bear's claw. Visualize the moment of repotting, when the tree is lifted from its pot, the root ball a dense, solid brick of soil and tangled fibres. You take the hook and begin to work from the outside in. Scrape, pull, loosen. You're combing the hair of the tree. The hook gently teases apart the circled roots, untangling the knots that have formed over the years. It removes the old, spent soil, allowing the roots to hang free and loose. There is a deep, tactile satisfaction in this process, a feeling of release. You're liberating the tree from its own constriction. The sound is a soft, earthy scratching. This tool teaches us that in order to grow into a new space, we must first untangle ourselves from the patterns of the past, gently combing away what binds us until we are free to stretch out once more. Once the roots are settled, we look to the branches, but sometimes the wire is not enough to lower a heavy, stubborn limb. We must use the physics of tension. We employ the guy wire. Instead of wrapping the branch in a spiral, we create a direct line of pull. Visualize a small loop of copper wire secured to a thick branch that is reaching too high, aiming too proudly at the sun. We connect this loop to a solid anchor point, a root, the pot's rim, or a small screw in the trunk below. Between these 2 points, we place a turnbuckle or a twisted loop. As we tighten the wire, the branch slowly bows downward. It is not forced by a corset of metal, but pulled by a guiding line. The branch resists, holding tension, but the wire is patient. Over months, the cells of the wood adjust to this new position. The wire vibrates slightly in the wind, a thin, invisible tendon holding the tree in its new posture. This technique creates a feeling of weight and age, mimicking the heavy load of snow or the pull of gravity on an old tree. It teaches us that sometimes we don't need to be surrounded and controlled to change. We just need a gentle, constant pull in the right direction to help us find our groundedness. From the tension of the wire, we turn our attention to the tactile sensation of the trunk itself. We stand before the crepe myrtle, or Lagostrumia. While the pine is rough and the apricot is craggy, the crepe myrtle is sensuously smooth. Run your mental hand along the trunk. It feels like polished bone, cool marble, or the muscular limb of an athlete. There is no bark in the traditional sense. Instead, the tree has a thin skin that exfoliates in summer. Patches of grey peel away to reveal a smooth cinnamon or pinkish tan underlayer. The trunk is often fluted, with long vertical hollows and ridges that look like flexed muscles. It is a tree that feels naked, vulnerable, and incredibly strong. Above this sculptural trunk, the canopy explodes in summer with crinkled paper-like flowers in shocking pink, white, or purple. They look like crepe paper, hence the name. But it is the touch of the trunk that lingers in the memory. It is cool and calming, a surface that invites the hand to rest, reminding us of the beauty of being smooth, polished, and unadorned. To nourish these smooth trunks and delicate flowers, we need a delivery system that is as refined as the tree itself. We do not use a garden hose which blasts with the force of a waterfall. We use a specialized tool, the watering wand with a fine mesh rose. Visualize the head of the watering can, the rose. It is often made of brass or copper, gleaming in the sunlight. Look closely at the face of the rose. It is pierced with hundreds of microscopic holes, drilled with laser precision. When the water flows through, it is broken up into a mist of tiny, uniform droplets. It creates a soft, white cloud of water. Listen to the sound as it hits the foliage, a gentle shh, like a soft summer drizzle. It does not disturb the soil, it does not wash away the moss, it simply kisses the leaves. The wand is long, allowing the artist to reach deep into the benches without bending, directing the rain exactly where it is needed. This tool is a marvel of simple engineering, transforming a heavy stream into a gentle caress. It teaches us that delivery matters, that even life-giving water can be harmful if the force is too great, and that gentleness is the most effective way to nourish. Under this gentle rain, a specific tree glows with a rugged, warm light. We are looking at the Scots pine, or Pinus sylvestris. This is the ragged survivor of the European highlands. While the Japanese black pine is dark and grey, the Scots pine is defined by the vibrant colour of its bark. Visualise the upper trunk and the branches. They're not brown, they're a brilliant flaky orange ochre, the colour of a fox's coat or a setting sun. The bark peels away in paper-thin plates, glowing against the blue-green of the needles. The needles are shorter and twisted, often with a slight bluish hue growing in pairs. The tree has a wild, untamed character. It rarely grows perfectly straight. It twists, turns and leans, mimicking the shapes found on windswept moors. The canopy is often sparse and flat-topped, looking like a cloud resting on a mountain peak. The Scots pine brings a warmth to the visual palette of the garden. To look at that orange bark is to feel a sense of heat and fire contained within the wood, a burning ember of life that survives the coldest, darkest winters. And as the cold of those winters approaches, the garden prepares for its long sleep. We end this cycle with the protective embrace of the cold frame or the winter shelter. Bonsai are trees, but they are trees in pots. Their roots are exposed to the freezing air on all sides, unlike their cousins in the ground. They cannot stay on the benches when the deep frost comes. Visualize a structure, low to the ground, covered in opaque white plastic or glass. Inside, the air is still and humid. We pack the trees tightly together, pot to pot, like penguins huddling for warmth. We mulch the pots with straw, pine needles or shredded leaves, tucking them in with a warm blanket. The temperature inside stays just around freezing, cold enough to keep them dormant, but warm enough to prevent the roots from turning to ice. The light that filters through the white cover is milky and diffused, a soft, dreamlike glow. It is a place of suspended animation. The trees are safe here. The wind cannot reach them. The heavy snow cannot break their branches. To peek inside a cold frame in January is to see a sleeping forest, silent and waiting. It is the ultimate image of rest, of the necessary pause that allows life to gather its strength for the coming spring. The world outside may howl, but inside everything is calm, protected, and deeply, deeply asleep. Deep within the milky, diffused light of the winter shelter, where the trees sleep in their huddled rows, we sense the slow, rhythmic turning of the earth. The days begin to lengthen, the light shifts from cool blue to a warm, pale gold, and the dormancy breaks. This awakening invites us to witness the miracle of replication, the art of sashiki, or propagation from cuttings. It is defiance of mortality. Visualize a small green greenhouse, warm and humid, filled with the scent of wet perlite and rooting hormone. We take a single healthy twig, a cutting, snipped from a master tree. It is a severed limb, bereft of roots, a piece of life suspended in the void. We place this twig into a bed of coarse, sterile sand, burying its cut end in the dark. It has no mouth to drink, no anchor to hold it, but covered by a clear humidity dome bathed in a constant mist, a transformation occurs in the silence. The cut end does not rot, it swells. Undifferentiated cells, confused by the darkness and the moisture, begin to change their purpose. They morph from wood cells into root cells. Visualize the tiny white thread-like roots erupting from the callus, reaching out into the sand, drinking the water for the first time. It is a moment of genesis. A clone is born carrying the exact genetic memory of its parent, yet starting its own journey as a separate individual. To watch a cutting take root is to understand that life is desperate to continue, that it can reinvent itself from even the smallest fragment, finding a way to drink, to grow, and to become whole again. As we tend to these tender new lives, and to the older trees that require pruning in the spring, we inevitably create wounds. To care for these cuts, we reach for a small, humble tub of cut paste or wound sealant. This is the bonsai equivalent of a bandage, but it is more akin to a second skin. Visualize the substance. It is a thick, pliable putty, often grey or clay-coloured, smelling faintly of oil and earth. It feels like soft modelling clay or beeswax between your fingers. After removing a branch, the artist rolls a small ball of this paste and presses it over the raw green wood of the cut. Press, smooth, seal. It adheres perfectly, covering the exposed cambium, locking the moisture inside and keeping the bacteria out. It creates a smooth, watertight seal. Over time, as the tree heals, the bark rolls over the wound, pushing the paste up and off. It eventually cracks and falls away, its job done, revealing the healed wood beneath. The application of cut paste is a gesture of compassion. It is an acknowledgement that while we must shape and prune to create beauty, we also have a responsibility to protect the vulnerable places we have exposed, sealing them with a layer of care until the tree is strong enough to protect itself. Leaving the deciduous trees to heal, we find ourselves with sticky fingers, standing before the pines in late spring. We engage in the rhythmic, meditative task of metsumi, or candle pinching and needle plucking. A pine tree does not grow leaves. It pushes out candles, vertical shoots that will eventually open into needles. To balance the tree's energy, we must manage these candles. But we do not use scissors, which would turn the needle tips brown and ugly. We use our fingers. Visualize the sensation of grasping a soft green pine candle between your thumb and forefinger. It is firm yet yielding. With a gentle twist and a pull, you remove a portion of the shoot. The sensation is tactile and sticky. The pine releases a drop of resin, scenting your hands with the sharp, clean aroma of turpentine and forest air. Following this, we may pluck the old needles from the previous year. Grasp, pull, release. Grasp, pull, release. It creates a mesmerizing rhythm, like counting rosary beads. Each plucked needle opens the interior of the tree to light and air. The sound is a soft snap or swish. It is a grooming ritual that connects you physically to the tree's flow of sap, a sticky, fragrant communion that slows the mind down to the speed of the growing season. From the upright, sticky pines, our imagination drifts to the water's edge, to a style that sits precariously between the vertical and the falling. We encounter the hankengai, or semi-cascade style. Unlike the full cascade that plunges deep below the pot, the semi-cascade reaches out horizontally, bowing just slightly below the rim. Visualize a tree growing on the bank of a river. The trunk grows out over the water, seeking the light reflected off the surface. The pot for a semi-cascade is deeper than a standard tray, but shallower than a full cascade tall pot. It is a square or round, majestic cup. The tree's line is one of reaching. It extends far to the left or right, hovering in the air. It requires a profound visual balance. The heavy trunk reaching out must be counterweighted by the visual mass of the pot and the soil. It suggests a yearning, a desire to touch something just out of reach. There is a tension in the semi-cascade, a frozen moment of leaning. It evokes the feeling of looking over a bridge, of being suspended between the safety of the earth and the unknown depth of the drop. It teaches us the beauty of extending ourselves, of leaning into the unknown while maintaining a strong-rooted connection to our base. This balance is not just about the tree, but about the geometry of the vessel itself. We turn our eyes to the philosophy of pot shapes. In bonsai, the shape of the pot is gendered, categorized into masculine and feminine. This is not about biology, but about energy. Visualize a masculine pot. It is rectangular or square. The corners are sharp, defined angles. The rim is straight, perhaps with a heavy lip. The feet are sturdy blocks. This pot holds powerful angular trees, the rugged pines, the thick-trunked elms. It radiates strength, stability, and unmoving weight. Now, visualize a feminine pot. It is oval or round. The walls curve gently. There are no sharp corners to arrest the eye. The rim is soft, perhaps rolling outward like a flower petal. The feet are delicate, maybe shaped like clouds or cat's paws. This pot cradles the maples, the flowering cherries, the smooth-barked beeches. It speaks of grace, fluidity, and softness. Choosing the right pot is a marriage of energies. Putting a rugged pine in a soft oval feels wrong, like a warrior wearing silk. Putting a delicate maple in a sharp rectangle feels harsh, like a dancer in heavy boots. It teaches us to observe the spirit of the living thing and provide it with an environment that echoes and supports its true nature. Changing textures entirely, we move from the hard ceramics and woody trunks to something soft, fleshy, and water-filled. We stand before the dwarf jade, or Portulacaria afra. This is the elephant bush, a succulent that mimics a tree. In the heat of the imaginary afternoon, touch the leaves. They are not like paper or needles. They are small, round, emerald green pads, thick and squishy, filled with water reserves. The trunk is soft too. It has a reddish-brown skin that looks woody, but yields slightly to the pressure of a fingernail. The jade is a creature of the sun. It does not need the constant watering of the maple. It hoards its moisture. In the bonsai pot, it creates a unique atmosphere of abundance and plumpness. It looks heavy, lush, and generous. Because the branches are heavy with water, they droop gracefully over time, creating a natural, relaxed silhouette. It brings a feeling of the desert oasis to the garden. It is a forgiving tree, resilient and robust, reminding us that there is strength in softness, and that storing our resources allows us to thrive even when the rain does not fall. To ensure that thrive, we must feed the soil, but we do not simply throw food on the ground where it can be washed away or stolen by birds. We use a tiny architectural element, the fertilizer basket. Visualize a small brown plastic or copper dome, no larger than a thimble, with a lid and slatted sides. It looks like a miniature lantern or a tiny bird cage stuck into the moss. We open the lid and place a ball of organic fertilizer inside, then close it. The basket protects the cake. When we water, the water flows through the dome, dissolving the nutrients and carrying them down into the soil directly at the root site. These little cages add a sense of scale and human care to the landscape. They look like little shrines dotting the forest floor. They represent the targeted, protected delivery of nourishment. They prevent waste. Seeing a row of fertilizer baskets on a pot tells you that this tree is being actively fed, that it is in a cycle of growth. It is a detail of stewardship, a reminder that the things which nourish us should be protected and administered with precision. Sometimes, the work of the artist is not to nourish, but to tear. We pick up a tool that looks medieval in its design, the gin pliers. These are not for cutting, they are for crushing. Visualize the head of the pliers, flat, square jaws with serrated teeth that interlock perfectly. When we want to create dead wood to turn a living branch into a spike of gin, we do not saw it off. We crush it. We grip the bark of the branch with the pliers. Crunch. The fibers of the wood are separated. Then we pull. We tear the bark away in long strips, following the grain of the wood. The sensation is raw and physical. It mimics the action of a storm tearing a limb from a tree. By tearing rather than cutting, we leave behind a natural, fibrous texture that looks weathered and ancient. The wood is left jagged, tapering naturally to a point. It is a violent act done with artistic intent. It reveals the grain, the story written in the wood fibers. Using the gin pliers is an act of unmasking, stripping away the soft outer layer to reveal the hard, durable core that will remain long after the leaves are gone. But some trees are not yet ready for the refinement of pliers or pots. They need raw, unbridled power. We travel now to the open earth, to the concept of field growing. Before a bonsai enters the confinement of a pot, it often spends years in the ground. Visualize a wide, open field with rows of pines and maples planted directly in the rich, dark loam. Here, there are no boundaries. The roots can run deep and wide. The tree senses this freedom and explodes with growth. The trunk thickens rapidly, the bark cracking and aging as it expands. We let sacrifice branches grow, long, wild limbs that we have no intention of keeping. These branches act as engines, pulling sap up the trunk, thickening the base, creating a powerful taper. The tree looks like a wild bush, a chaotic mess of green. But the artist knows that the future masterpiece is hidden inside. Field growing is the adolescence of the bonsai. It is the time for bulk, for strength, for unrestrained expansion. It brings a sense of wild vigour to the narrative. It reminds us that before we can be refined and polished, we must first have the space to grow wild, to build our substance and to put down deep roots in the open earth. Finally, we return to the pot, but we find one that has met with an accident. It lies in pieces on the floor. In the west, this would be trash. In the east, it is an opportunity for kintsugi, or golden joinery. We do not hide the break, we celebrate it. Visualize the artist taking the shards of a shattered antique pot. They mix a lacquer resin with powdered gold, real shimmering gold dust. They carefully glue the pieces back together, painting the cracks with this molten gold. The result is a pot that is veined with lightning bolts of light. The scar becomes the most beautiful part of the object. It tells the story of the break and the repair. The pot is now more valuable than it was when it was whole. It has a history. It has survived. Placing a tree in a kintsugi pot adds a profound layer of meaning. It speaks of resilience, of the beauty of imperfection, and the dignity of healing. It catches the light in the dim tokonoma, a glittering map of its past trauma turned into art. It offers the deepest comfort of all, the knowledge that being broken is not the end, but the beginning of a new, more beautiful form of wholeness. From the shimmering golden veins of the repaired pot, we lift our eyes one final time to the living sculpture it holds, arriving at the ultimate silent truth of this art form, the concept of stewardship, or azukari. This is the realization that echoes through the centuries. One does not own a bonsai, one merely takes care of it for the next generation. Visualize a white pine, gnarled and thick, standing before you. It is 300 years old. It was germinated before the invention of the steam engine, before nations rose and fell. It was watered by the hands of a monk in a mountain temple, pruned by a merchant in the Edo period, wired by a grandfather during a war, and now it sits before you. You can feel the ghostly presence of those thousands of hands. The tree is a living relay baton passed through time. It is a biological bridge connecting the past to the future. To care for such a tree is a humbling act of service. It reminds us of our own mortality. The tree will outlive you. It will outlive your children. You are but a brief season in its long life. This thought does not bring sadness, but a profound sense of connection. You are part of a lineage of care. You're adding your own layer to the story. Visualize yourself watering this ancient tree. You're feeding a being that will be gazed upon by eyes that have not yet been born. The bonsai is never finished. It is a river that never stops flowing. The masterpiece is not a static object, but the act of persistence itself, the daily vow to preserve beauty against the ravages of time. It is the ultimate act of hope, to plant, to shape, and to care for something that belongs to the future, trusting that when your hands are gone, another pair of hands will reach out, pick up the watering can, and continue the work. And now, the watering can is set down on the bench. The shears are wiped clean and placed in their leather case. The sun has fully set behind the distant imaginary mountains, and the garden is bathed in the silver, liquid light of the moon. The colours of the maples and the pines fade into soft shades of charcoal and indigo. The wind dies down, leaving the air still and silent. The gates of the secret garden are slowly, gently closing. You can hear the heavy wooden latch sliding into place. Click, sealing this world of miniature giants safely inside. You're drifting away from the moss, away from the ancient bark, floating back toward the river of the night. Feel the weight of your own body sinking deeper into your bed. The mattress holds you, just as the pot holds the tree, firmly, securely, rooting you in this moment of rest. Your breath becomes slow and rhythmic, mimicking the slow, centuries-long breath of the trees. Inhale, grow, exhale, release. Every muscle in your body uncoils, letting go of the tension, just as the branches let go of their leaves in winter. There is nothing left to prune, nothing left to wire, nothing left to shape. The work is done. The seasons have cycled, and now it is the season of rest. The darkness around you is not empty. It is a velvet blanket, rich and comforting. It is the negative space, the mar, the beautiful void where dreams can blossom. Let your mind become as clear and still as the water in the viewing stone's tray. Let the thoughts ripple away until the surface is perfect, reflecting only the stars. You are safe. You are grounded. You are part of the great, slow, breathing forest of the universe. The roots of your sleep go deep, drinking from the well of peace. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.